Well, welcome everybody to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. It's a privilege, it's an honor to be here tonight. And, thank you, the dozens of people that will watch this. Honestly, doesn't it seem like as I watch you interact in the chat room and everything, we're getting to know each other, and bonus, we're getting some pretty important things figured out. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to go through some different things. We'll see. You know what? I'm going to click off of these like that and open them up in just a straight download so they'll go in order. All right. So here's the thumbnail from tonight. And it is going to be about avian flu to start off with. Millennial reign of Christ. Just a picture I saw that. Oh, how'd that get in there? A picture of me practicing putting it. No, I'm just kidding. But you know how the mafia is in charge of things, right? No, we're going to have to save this one. I want to go these backwards. There, you couldn't read those. Going too fast, huh? The Bill and Melinda Gates. Now, I believe this is from 2008. Gave $1.3 million to University of Wisconsin-Madison for influenza research. Yashahiro Kawauka. He can get it done there at the University of Wisconsin. It was funded by Mr. Bill Gates, y'all. And by 2008, genes that made 1918 flu lethal isolated at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It might as well be 2009, right? 2008. Well, one day, one punch out. By mixing and matching a contemporary flu virus with the Spanish flu, a virus that killed between 20 and 50 million people 90 years ago. Well, that'd be 100 years now, 104 years. In history's most devastating outbreak of infectious disease ever, researchers have identified a set of three genes: 1918 virus, extraordinary virulence. That means it's strong. At the University of Madison, mixing and matching, devastating. Oh, man. So back to that first 1.8 million wasn't enough. So the University of Wisconsin-Madison got another 9.5 million in November 19, 2009. So, that was basically less than a year, right? January 1st, let's say was that. 11 months later, a 5-year, $10 million. Let's say they're going to get almost $2 million a year to identify virus mutations that would serve as early warnings of potential pandemic influenza viruses like the novel coronavirus that lockdown, shakedown, everybody, Friday night, something like that. Here's that guy, Yashahiro Kawauka, the virologist at the University of Wisconsin. You bad badgers. Bad badgers. Anyway, he's been trying to do gain of function. That's what I'm getting to. Yeah. And I think that's bad from what they say. 2010. This is going slow. I should check. If I know me. Oh, good. Okay, I'm sharing. 2010, February. You'd say that's over a year and 2 months. Genetic interactions between avian H1N1 influenza and human seasonal influenza viruses have the potential to create hybrid strains combining the virulence. I always struggle with that word because now I'm self-conscious, because at first I thought I was making fun of it, and then I was going like, is there enough vowels in there? Or this is another, this says with the pandemic ability of H1N1. Well, it took me about 20 years to know that. That means avian, that's bird flu. Is it swine flu? No, it's bird flu. So genetic interaction between avian H5N1 influenza and human seasonal influenza viruses have the potential to create hybrid strains competing the, now I even messed up the word because I was looking at virulence and I'm there like, this time I am going to nail it. And so I said, I called combining something else, bird flu with human and the pandemic ability of the H1N1. Got H3N2. Anyway, so here he is. There's Kawauka, hybrid swine bird flu virus possible, extremely lethal, February 22nd, 2010. University of Wisconsin, he issued a paper today going, guess what? Stop the presses. He did it. I have mingled swine flu with avian flu. Where's my honorary double doctorate with whatever else I need? Exclusive, controversial, Gates-backed U.S. scientist creates deadly flu strain for pandemic research for WTF, and this is from 2014. Scientists express horror over the creation of a virus that could render the human immune system defenseless. I thought if I jazzed it up a little bit, kind of, sweeten it a little bit, it wouldn't be so, timber. And sometimes it really is. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. I could have said it like, scientists express horror over the creation of a virus that could render the human immune system defenseless, or scientists express horror, or I could crush a can, throw it on the ground and say scientists. There's just having fun with it, and then they're just getting the point across. So anyway, here he is again, older and wiser now in 2019. Back to the Badgers. The University of Wisconsin-Madison scientist has been giving drugs to help them beat the Fighting Illini for years. That's the only explanation why. Never mind. This guy's a bird flu genome reuptake inhibitor. No, wait, that's serotonin. He's a bird flu swine H1N1 or H2N3. He can do it. He's getting money from Gates. Bill Gates wants rich countries to move 100% synthetic beef. Here's the opportunity behind this trend. Well, if there's going to be swine flu, I'll bet you something else is going on here. Oh, yeah, this is where they have in Ukraine, that during the migration routes, they had these, I think they were Bill Gates backed, they were studying bird flu there in Ukraine because that H5N1 Moscow, March 10th, Russian Defense Ministry obtained information about U.S. Project UP4 on research of particularly dangerous infections of migrating birds, including the H5N1. Did I miss that one? And the Newcastle disease, which had been developed in Ukraine biological laboratories. Head of Russian Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Protection Troops Igor Krylyov said 2 days ago, 1.5 days ago, depending on your time zone. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the study continues. The materials on military biological programs carried out by Joe Biden. I'm just kidding. This is 20. It was Clinton, it was Biden and Trump. They're both doing it, I guess. Oh, and all the NATO allies in Ukraine there. That's probably why they thought, why can't I be a partner? You're using my garage to build the race car. And they laughed at him and they told him, go dress like a girl in high heels and play around on your TV show. You carried out by the United States and its NATO allies in Ukraine, and the data obtained from various virulent sources confirmed the leading role of the United States Department of Defense threat reduction in funding and carrying out other military, biological, and I missed the other part because I was trying to cut and paste these screenshots so fast it would have made your head spin. But they want to kill all the birds now. So now, we're up to May 30, 2020. The scientist said, you know what, son of a bitch, this guy has proved that it's possible that something like this might evolve. So we should kill all the birds so it doesn't. And because then it might cross over to humans. That'd be bad. And just for the record, December 23rd, 2019, you might as well say 2020. So like 2.5 years ago, makes it easier for me. When something else was happening and we were getting ready here, one of the news stories said Chinese mafia were using drones to spread African swine fever. There's a pigs in China. He got covertly sprayed, and for $20 a month, if you play your cards right and you listen up and you do really good, you could save 15% on your car insurance. Now, on that was just a joke. I got a lot of that information from, for what do they call that? That full disclosure or something like that. And I know that I've heard that some of you don't like the Ice Age farmer. And the Ice Age farmer doesn't like me to show his videos. So I don't. I just took some screenshots. Hey, man. What's with this? That Jeff the Watchman, that's who I was looking for. All right, check it out. But anyway, yeah, we're going to be looking at this video. Now, I didn't know that this just came out. Exciting for me. I'm where was that? Oh, now it's not there. It was the Ice Age farmer, man. Oh, there it is. So if you haven't seen Christian from the Ice Age Farmer, I just gave you an overview of a lot of his screenshots. His description for himself is there is an untold story involving bird flu, a gain of function research, the Gates Foundation, and the Ukrainian biolabs, and it is time to tell it, the untold story. As hundreds of millions of birds are killed due to bird flu PCR outbreaks, Europe is warning of chicken and egg shortages. And many states have now outright banned the sale of chickens to the public. The largest egg producer in the United States has killed the birds and fired its workers. In the Ice Age Farmer exclusive that I chopped the screenshots and showed you, Christian broke down the sordid story of this virulent virus and asked, will weaponized H5N1 be the final human pandemic? No, he thought next. I'm thinking, I was trying to be dramatic. Let me know if that worked in the chat room. So this time I'll share. So here's Christian's channel. Highly contagious. Cancel poultry shows and do those other things. U.S. considers vaccines to protect the poultry from a deadly bird flu. Because they can kill the birds, but they can't kill you. Not yet. This is that company that I was telling you about that laid off all the workers and killed all the chickens. They just said, you know what, I'm just so tired of all these laws. Worst epidemic in the world as of February 17, 2022. New outbreak of bird flu. And anyway, this is all Bill Gates' fault. Do you guys know that? Bill Gates did it. Russian Defense Ministry continues to study the materials on military biological programs carried out by the United States and its NATO allies. We read that part, but we didn't know that we've discovered details about Project 4UP. We did know that part. Implemented with involvement of laboratories, new info, laboratories in Kyiv, Kharkov, and the island fortress of Odessa, and planned for period until 2020. The project's goal was to research a potential of spread of particularly dangerous virulent infections via migrating birds. Watch out. Yeah, they did it. Oh, I thought it's 1.5 was their first initial thing, but it was 1.3, and the article was from where's the date on this thing, man? But anyway, remember when I showed you that one thing, man, the one highlight that says, you think I can't gain a function? And then he goes, no, I did it. I got it, man. Gain of function, did it. Who wants to sell synthetic food? Done. Who's sitting back, waiting to jump down, turn around, and then pick another freaking bale of cotton? Well, it's not any of you guys that are hanging out here. I know that. What's this? Uh-oh. So are we witnessing the beginning of the de-dollarization? I just thought that was a fun, because it started out talking about how in 2022 the United States lost to the war in Afghanistan, and then we already forgot about it. But no, we also started with the surging Omicron because that's how we forgot about getting our asses kicked by Afghanistan. Whatever. Anyway, Russia invaded, and then it's like, yeah, let us help you because we know how to not get our ass kicked. Oh, wait, no, we don't. But you can trust us not to have your best interest at heart, you little high-heeled dancing Ukraine acting cutie there. We know you're trying to loosen up those LGBTQs and the military over there in Ukraine, and it's working. You got it all under control. You either are driving them back into Russia with their tail between their heads, or they're massacring everybody, and we need to okay the use of nuclear weapons. Or it's somewhere in the middle. Isn't that quite the extreme? That they're driving them back, the small forces with Zelensky is driving them back and counting the tanks and that, or another massacre, send us more weapons, we're getting our ass kicked. Well, what is it? Which one is it? Am I on the right show? I am not. I'm on the wrong one. Man, I was just checking in on the wrong show. I had the other thing open. What's going on here? So we are live on this one. I wonder how if I shared anything. Hey, I was checking this out, closed it out. Now this, got some emails. We'll come back to this one. This was fairly interesting here. He's got these things that look fairly interesting. Now I told you. And then there's another one, Jesus in Genesis. So we got these to look forward to. And this one is only 17 minutes. We're warned we can learn and glean from anybody. So I'm looking forward to that. And then there's another one, capturing light in glass. Oh, the Lichtenberg effect.
Most of us have heard of the phrase, like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. It describes something that's extremely difficult, bordering on the impossible. Well, this one artist by the name of Bert Hickman has done just that. Well, almost. He does not capture lightning in a glass bottle. He captures it in plexiglass, or better known as acrylic. When I first came across the video, what appeared to be slabs of glass being hit with a hammer and nail, injecting the glass with electricity to create an interesting lightning pattern, I thought, oh, that's cool, let's do a story on it. But I had no idea what was actually going on until it was explained to me. I asked Bert, the artist behind these amazing pieces of art, a series of questions in an email, and my first question was, can you explain exactly how this captured lightning works? When I read Bert's reply, I thought he was making a joke. He said, we use a high-power, high-voltage particle accelerator to inject trillions of electrons into pieces of plexiglass. Now that might be exactly how they make these captured lightning sculptures, but when you watch the original video, all you see is a piece of glass being hit with a hammer and nail. I thought for sure he was joking around. But trust me, the information I'm about to cover does not do it justice of how complex it really is. If you really want to read the science behind what is going on, I have put a link to their website below. But trust me, even though I'm about to start talking this scientific jargon, I have greatly abbreviated what is happening. Bert told me they use a 5 million volt electron accelerator to charge up the interior of the acrylic to millions of volts. The electrons pass through a thin titanium window and exit the accelerator traveling at 97 to 99% the speed of light. They then travel through 2 feet of air before striking the piece of acrylic below. As the electrons slam into the acrylic, X-ray fluorescence and radiation cause the acrylic to glow brilliantly. Speckles on the screen in this video footage are from high-energy X-rays passing through 18 inches of concrete and then striking the camera's image sensor. Because acrylic is an excellent electrical insulator, the injected electrons slow down, coming to a stop about halfway through, building up a layer of huge electrical charge of 1 million to 2.5 million volts. They then discharge the piece of acrylic by hitting it with a sharp metal point, like a nail. Once hit, the charge suddenly rushes out in a brilliant lightning-like flash. The charge's passage blasts thousands of permanent fractures and hollow tubes inside the acrylic, creating a fossil of the path they took. This fossil effect is called a Lichtenberg figure. Lichtenberg figures are branching tree-like patterns that are created by the passage of high-voltage electrical discharge along a surface, such as the pattern left behind when lightning hits the grass in a storm. After the main discharge, many secondary discharges are seen going off around the acrylic, like electricity bouncing around. This leftover charge will temporarily remain in the acrylic, but it eventually leaks away. But it can last as long as a few minutes to a few hours. Once the excess charge is dwindled off, the acrylic is mounted with LED lights, shining into the acrylic to show off the lightning's path in all its glory.
Now, as I look
Now,
at that
unlike other
one,
art sculpture stories I've done,
I don't see where the nail would have hit it. So I don't know if they're showing or if they would have hit it from the bottom. So you could actually set up your table to hit it anywhere. He must have hit it from directly in the center of this one. That is what happened. If you already knew that, I apologize.
Finished sculptures might be worth thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. These lightning sculptures can sell for as little as $25 to $250, which makes them a rather affordable sculpture for something so amazing and so beautiful. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Now that's an interesting view that you can see they don't just stay on a straight line. They go all directions. I would have liked to seen it from the side. You can almost see it looks 3D. So that was very interesting. Got to remember to check that one out. I was also interested in, now stellium 7. These are all from, he started. No, I forget. The email was along the line, hey, someone else must have been listening to you. Oh, yeah. Stellium is one of these guys that's in the band of the recent Tartarians. And when Randy and I, before October 2019, is all I know, because while I was there, while Randy was with me, I got a call from Stellium 7. I believe his name is Mark or Mike. And he, was asking me questions and saying, oh, man, no, I appreciate, I'm just going to go that, it's elephants and stuff, but we're leaving the door open that it's in giants and things like that. Those things really happen. Some people, like I know Luther will probably remember all this. We're just going over some old history here, Luther, because of an email that was that he thought someone else was listening to me, and that was this one, and he was mirroring something.
You're not going to do it.
Did you ever think that maybe you're not too big, but maybe this town is just too small? Now, I've heard in real cities they've got buildings so tall you can't even see the tops of them.
Really?
I wouldn't lie to you. And all-you-can-eat buffets? Now, you can eat a lot, can't you?
I can.
So why are you wasting your time in a small town?
I gotta see, he did a good transition.
It's too small for a man of my ambition. So what do you say? Join me?
Okay.
Shaky ground. Nevertheless, strata are regularly used to justify timelines stretching to hundreds of millions of years, despite multiple flaws in the theory. It wasn't long after being exposed to these new ideas that I began to consider the possibility that much of the...
And so, people, there's nothing wrong with needing to catch up. Here's Stellium 7, and he's done so much good work, and I just think he is freaking awesome. Now, I'm not quite as sure about Xerxes. Andreas Xerxes. We're going to look at that one. We saw that one. So let's see. Let's get some anything from Andreas Xerxes. You know his videos. Well, he was doing interviews with me about 3 years ago. He was getting in, I guess, to the mud flood and things like that. He doesn't put a lot of, he takes a lot of his videos down. But he was learning a lot. And he called me a few times and he was pumping my brain, and I interviewed him and he interviewed me, and he went to Spain, I believe, to get Stellium 7 interested in finding anything, but could it be anything but the Bible? And Stellium 7 came up with, yeah, it could be an elephant. We could go with it's an elephant. And I think he honestly believes that. But not quite as trusting of Andreas as I am of Stellium. Here he is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to carry on with the welcome originally by Flight Captain Stein will also give you some further information concerning. And if you wish to use Lufthansa flight or using electronic devices and flying on board, please read the information in your Lufthansa.
Let's see what this most popular video is. Three years ago. I remember this one.
And that's what it is that makes them so much better. Not. Anyway, so this is the crest of Carl Jung, and this is his family crest, which inspired him as a young boy to study symbols because he wanted to know what the inherent value of these inherited symbols was that he had been given and apparently had been correlated with a kingdom and with fantastical legacy of war. And there's a library and a castle, so you want to understand the background. But he ended up creating this, which was his own Carl Jung crest, and you'll see that it retracts the four cornered.
So as you can see, everybody that's into it got into it at the, they got. This is why I don't care if I'm only speaking to, but if it sounds like I'm patronizing you, I'm not. the most important to me people right now are you guys. But do I have any doubt that if anybody ever goes, now, where did this movement come from? There, it comes back to the Lord telling me, look into how the stones are crying out.
And the Vitruvian Man from Leonardo da Vinci, and we think about how that could be like Leonardo da Vinci talks a lot about like femininity and androgyny, and well, maybe trivia, like the electrical systems that Asteria had that ended up in the war that became Panzer tanks and were originally homemade tanks in the Civil War, and the electric systems that they had invented probably came from Tartaria. Well, let's get into steam power, because the electric steamers of the 19th century are fantastic, and they don't really require coal, they just require steam. And so I propose that they were electric. Now, there are lots of examples of steam powered electric things. Nuclear generators are steam powered, and nuclear itself is a steampunk technology. And they want you to convince you that it's dangerous.
Man, I taught them all about the Redstone rockets, and now they're all, thank you, but we just don't need you because I just would not get pushed off of I'm not your Atlantis boy.
It's been buried under a lake in California because of a dam, and it's was buried very vibrant. There was a bridge. It's been uncovered recently, more or less, and you can see the quality of the stonemasonry is almost Peruvian again, and Gothic, Visigothic, and alludes to this Tartarian concept. And here's another example of a submerged ghost city. And here's another example of a submerged ghost city. And you'll find these around South America, here in the world, but here's one in Venezuela, in the Potosi, where they built a dam in order to essentially hide this church. They had electricity, of course. South America gets most of its electricity from Paraguayan dam, but iconoclasm, communist era, right? So we've got the building kind of wiped out, and interestingly enough, it survived. And when it resurfaced, it was still the last thing that lasted. So they tried to blow it up. Seriously, they tried to blow it up with dynamite. This is what's left of it. That should provoke you as well.
Right, I'm telling you. And Andreas, he is such a, he's a joy to talk to. He's so smart. I wonder what he's up to now. I mean, he got tired of me telling him, Andreas, the last thing you need is a new girlfriend if you're really trying to please the Lord and be this good guy you're all talking about. Let's see what he's up to nowadays. Here, Atlanticism. Look at how.
We are calling Tartaria.
Oh my goodness, Andreas, you aged so much.
Cleaner vision of time and social development, so evolution, without all this modern Western existence of the soul, that it.
Blah, blah.
Hey, everybody, tune in to We the Tartarian.
We the Tartarian. We the Tartarian.
Luther, you remember this, don't you? I know Randy was there. He was there when he called.
How you doing, buddy? Good. Yeah, I haven't seen you for a while. It's good to see you again. Man, where have you been? Where are you at right now?
Let's see, when was the last time we talked to each other? That would have been like fall, right after the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. As of right now, I am not in my normal abode. I am in Ukraine.
Oh, really? It's a really tourist-hidden location recently, I've heard. Cool. So
Yeah,
you're on the ground, see stuff.
Yeah, that's why the lighting is bad and the walls are generic.
Blah. I've had a lot of different people come through here. They're a band. They're a rock and roll band. Get a real drum kit.
What's this thing called?
Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry.
In what place?
Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry. Talk, Terry. With Brother Ray. Recent talk, Terry. Recent talk, Terry.
You know, it's cool. They're cool. It's all cool. Hey, guess what I got today? Man, I got these, and Tommy said he'd grow them for me. How cool is that? I got some of these. I got something called Mohawk and another one that's really sounded good. Oh man, look at that. And then you can just eat them. Eat it. Oh, we didn't read that one yet. I wanted to look at this here. You know, I haven't seen this one yet. I mean it. I mean it. How you guys doing, man? So that's just some more of the history of this. It's all leading back. It's all active against the Bible. They're all going for the Atlantis, Francis Bacon. And there's a reason. They're using sigillistic magic. Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, Stellium is a good guy. I think that, you know, if anything, the way he approached Paco's son, the guy who did the helical heart, and I haven't heard Stellium say anything about Andreas Xerxes, but you know, he's right there. I mean, where is the stupid thing? I know that I saw his name right here. It showed him right here on a road trip with him. This is when he was probably teaching Stellium about the rocks. Because that's Stellium driving. Look, he's on the wrong side of the road. They're going to that place.
Look at that. That's the church I wanted to see everyone. It's right outside of town. Looking at the side of the castle.
Whoa, that's really cool. I gotta give you one.
You gotta find no.
The only time I got a weird vibe when I was on the phone with Andreas was when it seemed like he was pumping me for too much information, because I was going like, and then there's the salt, and I was trying to figure out salt mines and stuff, and he was going like, what, you know, I don't know. And then when he was wearing, you know, at the very start, this was still October 2019 through New Year's, he was wearing a plague mask going through all of the, this is before people were told to mask up. He was just wearing a plague mask, thinking it was funny. And so if he thinks I forgot that, I haven't. But what a fun day. I hope you guys don't mind. I haven't seen what Conspiracy Are Us, who I think, if you want to know about another conspiracy, I think Conspiracy Are Us is the original mud flood who started out as electronic projects. and electronic projects, and then he put out the New Madrid comet and earthquake stuff, and he was using Doug Bartle's pictures from where would that married go? Niagara Falls. So here's what he was saying here. Right. You know, this is, and amen. The Lord just keeps it like, keeps it coming, you know, so much that it doesn't, you know, that right now, the only thing that has mattered is that, you know, we've had this time since basically last July to see if I was going to be right. And then sure enough, Hurricane Ida killed that shit. And it's still going on today. So there's no doubt. I mean, if there's, you know, you can just hang on, you know, and just follow along. That's fine. But in my mind, what more? I mean, maybe this is another feint. Maybe the Hunter Biden laptop and, you know, the president wandering off going like, is that powdered sugar on me? Or, you know, the war with the killing of the birds, the avian flu in Ukraine. And then it's like, no, Russia did it. Russia's bad. And then I heard Hillary had to pay a fine today. It's bread and circuses for the masses. And in the meantime, it was only 4 or 5 years ago that it was like, no, maybe Armageddon's over. And then like Randy's going like, will you make up your mind if it's going to be Armageddon's over, or are we going to be drilling rocks? And I'm like, well, let's drill rocks. And then I would change my mind again. But Stellium 7 was doing the heavy work. And so I was kind of, you know, it was like, I really wanted to get the Bible settled. So Stellium did the heavy lifting for a year there. It's all working out. Yay. And then, so now, finally this.
With that event being upcoming in our future, maybe that's already happened. Now, that's sort of a far out concept, but I'm going to present some biblical verses that I think are very interesting, as well as some physical evidences. So let's just jump right into it. Now, the book of Revelation in chapter 20, verses 7 through 9, they allude to a period of time after Jesus returns, his second coming, after his millennial reign on earth. There's going to be a time after that that's referred to here in these verses. And looking at verse 7, it just says, when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison. And he comes out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth. And you have this final battle of Gog and Magog. And could that be us? So I think the speculation is we might be living through this period of time. Now, I'm going to share with you 7 instances in the Bible where I think it talks about the imminent return of Jesus. And the first 5 examples that I'm going to share are coming from Jesus himself. And what I want you to pay attention to is the dualistic nature of these instances. Like, they'll mention the imminence of Jesus's return and how Jesus returns. Because when Jesus...
You guys, those graphics, you know, one of those things takes like 10 minutes for me, and that's so cool.
Returns, he's mentioned as descending from the heavens. Also, he's on a white horse, and he returns with his angels. Just something to keep a remembrance of as I read some of these verses. But starting with Mark chapter 14, verse 61 and 62, Jesus is being questioned by a high priest, and the high priest asks him, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven." So Jesus is asked a question directly by this high priest, and Jesus responds to the high priest. And he says, you know, "I am the Christ, the Son of the Blessed." And he says to the high priest, "You will see the Son of Man coming with the clouds." So it speaks.
And seated where he stays in the heavens, not at some mythical throne in Jerusalem.
To the imminence, and it speaks to how Jesus will return. So let's look at another chapter in Mark chapter 13, verses 26 and 30. And this one just says, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass until all these things take place. So again, this generation speaks to the imminence and the manner in which how Jesus returns coming with the clouds. So this dualistic nature spoken of in both these places. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 16, verses 27 and 28. For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So again, how does Jesus return? With his angels returning in the clouds, coming in the clouds. And it speaks to the imminence. There are some standing here who will not taste death until they see his return. This is Jesus speaking throughout all these instances. Let's look at Mark chapter 8, verse 38. Here Jesus is saying, for whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So again, the imminence, Jesus is saying, speaking to that generation, and also how Jesus returns with his holy angels. Again, all of these are Jesus speaking, and he's saying he's coming back. Jesus himself is saying his return is imminent, and it also alludes to how Jesus will return, coming with the clouds, descending from the heavens with his angels. And this is the last verse that is Jesus speaking that I'm going to present here. It's Matthew chapter 10, verse 23. And it's just Jesus talking to his disciples, telling them about an upcoming period of persecution they'll experience. So he just says, when they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So this one isn't dual, like it doesn't say how Jesus will return, as the previous four did, like descending from the heavens, coming with the clouds. But it does speak to the imminence. It's Jesus talking to his disciples saying, just keep fleeing from one town to the next, but you won't get through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man returns. Pretty clear. That's 5 verses. Now, there's 2 more that are pretty clear. This isn't Jesus speaking in these, but they're saying the same thing. Revelation chapter 1, verse 7, behold, he is coming with the clouds, referring to Jesus, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. So the manner in which Jesus returns with the clouds, coming with the clouds, and the imminence. So the people who pierced Jesus will see him returning, coming with the clouds, repeating the same.
Hey, I have to interrupt this program now. If you've heard this before, like I have, and I'm glad other people preach it, but I have to sit through it a lot. So sometimes my mind wanders, and I've been wandering, sometimes I read some of these things, that other, and I don't want to say other, because I don't want to be associated with other theologians. That's a safe word. And one of the things they're bugging on now is, what about the raven, man? What happened to the raven when Noah released him from the ark? He didn't come back. The dove came back, and then he shut the doors, and he waited another week. Where's the raven, man? And they're writing essays on it. And this one guy even tied it into the year of the Jubilee. And so I was thinking about that. And you know what? I was thinking, I don't care what it is. Maybe the raven just stayed on the roof and didn't want to go back in. But then, so as I was trying to tick things off in my mind, I think I've got it. The raven is an unclean bird. Back then, it's a carrion eater. It's like a vulture. It's like a mini vulture. I don't care how smart I get it. I've been drinking a beer here tonight, and if I don't finish it, it's going to not be yummy because these cheap beers aren't good when they're not cold. And I still get thirsty, but I think that's it. So, you guys familiar with that? I know you are. Now let's see. That's in the New Testament, right? I think there's a. We'll look it up. So I think it must be at the very beginning. So there's Genesis 1. Where is it? Well, it can't be it. So let's go back to Genesis. We'll take 8. All right. So here's the flood subsiding. And there's supposed to be something about a dove and a raven. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark. For the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. All right, so he grabbed the dove, just like some people someday, Lord willing, will be grabbing pigeons with messages from their loved ones when nobody else can use the internet, because they'll go like, that stupid Paco, Alan Blaine, said maybe we should try to train some pigeons or doves or whatever you want to call them. Squab. You ever hear them called squab when they're babies? I guess that's what they called them. They used to like to shoot them before they got a year old and call it squab. I got something else on this right on the tip of my tongue. You know, here's the waters continued to abate until the 10th month, or in the 10th month on the first day of the month. When's the first time that people could stop being vegetarians? As long as we're here. As long as we're here, we'll start. And what's the big deal? Thanks, Aaron. What's the big deal? Well, there's only 2 of each kind of the animals that they brought on, of the unclean animals. So there would have been only 2 ravens. And so if the first raven went out and like, oh, I can't fly for a week and I died, when the other raven landed, it'd be like no more ravens. But don't we have a lot of ravens? I don't care how smart they are and how you can raise them as pets or whatever, you don't eat them. They like to go and find the dead animals, and that's ugh. Oh yeah. So Genesis 9, they're disembarking here. And he's he's doing this covenant keeping with, you want to keep the covenant. Every living creature that is with you. So he knows they're living creatures. And I've shown, and John showed, that these are all souls. Same, if you're a living soul, then they are too. Because that living word is the word that you are as living souls. Birds, livestock, every beast of the earth, as many came out of the ark, burst earth. But that's not what we're talking about here. Where is the verse that we're talking about? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, here. They're disembarking. They try to be better than the Titans and be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. They don't do it that well either. They go and build that Tower of Babel. The fear of God, the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hands they are delivered. Everything that moves, everything that lives shall be food for you. As you know, so quit telling me about all those earlier verses that seem to imply that you should be a vegetarian. They don't. I agree with you. They don't seem to imply it. They say back, the first 8 chapters, you should be a vegetarian. But now he's saying if it moves and it moves, you can eat it. Just do it right, butcher it right, do this. No blood ever. From the very first time that we're told we can eat meat, it is forbidden. Never eat it. Never, ever. You're lucky you get to eat meat, you lazy bat. Oh, I'm just kidding. You lady. I was going to call you Basque blood group people. You non-monkey blooders all think you're too good. I'm not, except for Randy. He's a non-monkey blooder and he's okay. That's because he keeps memorizing the Bible all the time. If I read the Bible 2 more times a year for the rest of my life and I could live 20 more years, I still wouldn't be able to catch up with him reading the Bible, even if he quit. He actually reads the Bible so well they pay him. He's a professional Bible reader. Kinda. Ask him about it sometime. Somebody remembers, are you a professional Bible reader?
A message that was in the first four instances I showed you. And then the last example, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15 through 16. For this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven. So again, the imminence, we who are alive, and the manner with which Jesus will return. He descends from heaven, from the clouds with his angels. That's 7 instances. And I just wanted to share that with you because there's many more verses than this. I think there's over 15 that I can think of, but I wanted to share with you these 7, 5 coming from Jesus himself, because there is scriptural evidence that backs this position up, that Jesus actually returned a while ago, and we're on the other side of that. But is there any physical evidence? I mean, it's all well and good. People have different interpretations of verses. Is there physical evidence? And this is where things get interesting for me, because I started by looking into our history. And when you look, and I've covered this before, but when you look at the official history and narrative of the Western Roman Empire, we're told it's a gradual fall over roughly 100 years. But when you start to see images of the Roman Empire, it's completely devastated. And what's interesting about the fall of the Western Roman Empire is you have this 1,000-year period of time called the Dark Ages that happen after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And why that's interesting is because what I'm putting forward is that,
oh my goodness, jump ahead. Look at him go. He's moving ahead. Keep going. Keep moving past 476. Oh my goodness.
Roman Empire was actually destroyed during Armageddon, which was in our past. And these Dark Ages probably weren't as dark as they're portraying. This would have been the millennial reign of Christ. It's just all being misdescribed to us. But as you continue to look into the damage done to what we call the Roman Empire.
I was hoping he would tie it into Armageddon could be much later than we thought, into what they call the Middle Ages. That's where I want to go. That's what I need help on. Anybody out there that's not like Andreas or Noah and not a total wahoo.
Rome itself, Italy itself, portions of it completely buried. There was excavations happening for decades, around the turn of the 20th century. But yeah, so you got a lot, there was places buried 20, 30, 40 feet deep. And
you know what? No. I just need about 10 more seconds of that picture. Look at that. Look at how high This is kind of looks like that picture from Kansas. I'd clean the steps off first too. That's a pretty good jump there that you can still do that if you're wearing some loose jeans. That what happened there?
It's happening for decades, around the turn of the 20th century. But yeah, so you got a lot, there was places buried 20, 30, 40 feet deep. And when they expand their subway lines, they find Roman remains 30 feet deep. This was, they found the ruins of a Roman barracks. So they're continuously finding things 10, 20, 30 feet. And even there's Roman sites all throughout Europe. This one was in Sofia, Bulgaria. They were doing these excavations for their metro, their subway station, and they uncovered this Roman city, and it's buried, 10, 20, 30 feet deep. And they turned it into a archaeological complex. So there's just a lot of buried Roman sites, and I've talked about the many buried Roman bathhouses that they find a lot of times accidentally. The UK has a lot of them. I touched on this one in Amman, Jordan, southern Spain. So the idea that I have is
they all went bad. They all went bad. Just like we'd all go bad, and we would have all continued to go bad unless something changed our hearts. We can't pick out one civilization and go, they're the bad guys. We are in the midst of understanding we're all the bad guys. There haven't been any good guys except the Lord Jesus Christ.
That these weren't just randomly buried because of earthquakes and the like, but the reason why all these things are buried and destroyed is because this was caused by Armageddon, which was in our past. Now, there's been other researchers who looked into the first millennium, the first 1,000 years, and it seems like there's been phantom time placed within that to sort of stretch out the timeline. And when you actually look at what was happening within Rome itself, there were almost nothing was being built from 300 AD to like 1000 AD. And the only thing that was actually being built, that according to the official narrative, were basilicas, basically churches. But when you look at the churches, whether they said they were built from 500 AD or 800 AD, they looked exactly like the churches from the first 300 years AD.
He's jumping it back there.
So what I'm putting forward here is, and what this
usually should be right
researcher
there.
I covered in this video, the timeline manipulation. The idea, I believe, is that they are falsifying large portions of time in the first millennium. So if there was an Armageddon event, you'd think, well, it should affect other areas, right? You would think it would affect other areas, and it does. I think it does anyway. When you look at the history of Istanbul, used to be called Constantinople. You had these things, structures like the Hippodrome, and you had these harbors, and there's a large portion of the Hippodrome that's buried today. And there were excavations done in the 50s, revealing stadium steps. And there was this port of Theodosius, and I think in 2012 or thereabouts, they rediscovered this ancient port, buried 10, 20, 30 feet. And there's a lot of structures that are buried in Istanbul, and they have different, the official narrative gives different explanations for why all these things are buried. But I think that we're looking at this Armageddon event. That's why. It's just we're given cover story. In my view, we're given cover stories for all these things. And I think the Americas felt the brunt of this Armageddon event as well. And of course, the Maya empire comes to a mysterious end in the first millennium. And large portions of that empire are still buried underneath jungle and who knows how many layers of earth. So I think this was a worldwide event. In India, there were empires that came to an end. This particular empire, they discovered this particular empire or portions of it buried, and they thought these were hills, but these hills turned out to be remains of palace complexes and temples. and you could just see how deeply these things were buried. And I think this was because of an Armageddon event. So it's not only throughout Europe, it's also, I believe, throughout the world, and including Asia and India and the Americas. In the previous video, I also touched on, I think in part one, this idea of during Armageddon, you would have elements melting with a fervent heat. And I talked about Cappadocia in Turkey. I just wanted to quickly mention there's this valley, the Phrygian Valley, which I think is a little over 200 miles west of Cappadocia in Turkey. But there are just some really interesting looking formations. They look melted. I just wanted to kind of show these formations because they're just really interesting. But this notion that things could be melted, if that is the case, I think they might relate to this Armageddon event. Now, that leads me right into the idea of the first trumpet and the book of Revelation, because in Revelation chapter 8, verse 7, we have this description of the first angel blew his trumpet, and skipping down a bit, and a third of the earth was burnt up, and a third of the trees were burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. So if this actually happened, and this is in our past, we should see some evidences that this might have happened. And I think that you do see this evidence because all around the world, there's these highly fertile soils, usually referred to as black earth or dark earth. They go by different names in Asia and throughout Europe. There's another type of this black earth called Chernozem. It is one of the most fertile soils used in current agricultural production. And there's a bit of mystery usually surrounding these dark earths. Now, they don't know exactly how these came to be. They have theories, and one of them is that it was formed, these bands of this Chernozem were formed by intensive vegetation burning. So my thought is that these dark earths of mysterious origins, they were created during this Armageddon event. And in the United States and throughout Canada, instead of Chernozem, they call them mollisols. But in a previous video, I touched on a group of researchers who studied these dark earths in the Amazon rainforest, found that here in the US, we have grassland soils that contain lots of charcoal. So you have these highly fertile soils, charcoal rich, highly organic, and a lot of them have mysterious origins. Like there's theories, like people will talk about previous cultures managing the soil, and then that information always gets lost. But the constant is this fertile soil all throughout the world. And I think it's related to this Armageddon event and the first trumpet. And again, in the Amazon rainforest, you have this probability sectional map, but the blue areas indicate where the dark earth sites are likely to be. And this particular soil geographer, William L. Woods, at Southern Illinois University, says that this dark earth, or terra preta as it's referred to, it covers a surface area in the Amazon.
Now, with your mind fresh on the Lichtenberg fractures, imagine the Lord hitting it with a shock here and there being titans from the previous creation, because I think most of you know this is a recreation. And then during the flood, when the glittering sword was reintroduced, they not only got the Amazon, but some of the stored energies opened up their things, and other rivers would have been working instead of the canals only. Possibly something. I know I'm missing a lot there, but we got to add to it. We got to fit those other Elohim in here.
Equivalent to the size of France. So there is a lot of this dark earth in the Americas and in Europe, Asia. You can find it in a lot of different places. They're finding it more and more places. Yeah, there's theories, and one of the theories it's man-made, but there's also speculation that it's been created through natural processes. My view is that these dark earths, they were created during this Armageddon that happened in our past. And what has really convinced me that these dark earths were formed as a result of possibly this Armageddon event, which would have been in our past, is because they find this dark earth sitting on top of a lot of these different sites, primarily Roman sites. Whether the Roman sites are partially or fully buried, with a lot of those sites, they'll find this dark earth sitting on top of those sites. Why that's interesting is because if indeed the Armageddon is in our past, that would have affected what we call the Roman Empire. That would have been the empire that was existing when Jesus would have returned, if indeed that did happen in our past. So the fact you have this dark earth sitting on top of these Roman sites, these partially or fully buried Roman sites, it's just another indicator that something significant happened at that period of time. And as I've sort of been presenting here, I think we're looking at the first trumpet, things being burnt up on a massive scale. And this is just one of the indicators, all this dark earth. So, and there's a lot of sites, especially in the UK, during excavations, they'll find traces of this dark earth. So, but I've touched upon that in previous videos. So very interesting. And I think just last year, 2021, they found more of this dark earth at this former Roman site of Vindolanda. And they attribute the dark earth to, I think they attribute it to dwellings made out of wood that were built on top.
Man, I attribute every wonderful endorphin that's going on me right now to the praise and glory of the Lord Jesus Christ for letting me have the honor of knowing him and being involved with this unveiling of his word. I am humbled and excited, so excited.
Of the Roman site after the fact, but it's just so consistent across all these different countries and continents. I think it's just one major phenomenon, but that is my view. Now, the last thing I'd like to
did you give him permission to use that picture of you, Luther?
Touch on is just questioning if indeed we are on the other side of the millennium, where did everybody go? And a lot of good ideas have been put forth, and people talking about extra land in the South Pole or in the North Pole, and there's some interesting maps. This is from Mercator 1606. So can't rule anything out, but I came across another interesting article that talks about the New Jerusalem during the millennium. Now we know from the book of Revelation in chapter 21, verse 1 and 2, that there will eventually...
Oh my goodness, is that a cool map or what? I think I had this really cool map too. Where's that really cool map I had? Oh, well, maybe we'll run into it again. That's pretty cool. See, those like real foundations, doesn't it? In a little eyeball. That's muscles in your eyeball to me. But it's just a dome picture, another interruption for no apparent reason. It took way too long. Oh, it's almost over? Oh.
Be a new heaven and a new earth, and the New Jerusalem, the holy city, fully descends at that time, which is in our future. But during the millennium, some people are speculating that the New Jerusalem will actually appear over the earth, but visible, below the heavens, but over the earth. They will be visible during this period of time. And this is just one particular article I came across, and you can pause and read this if you wish, but I'm still looking into it. There's not a lot of verses that directly talk about it, but there's some verses you could kind of infer.
Yeah, well, during the time that Satan's loosed, it's not up there.
That maybe the New Jerusalem partially descends during this period of time, but it's just, again, this is just a thought.
All right, well, you got just a thought. We'll just get to clear our minds.
It's not enough for us just to know that victory is impossible. For our own safety, we must conduct our foreign affairs in such a way as to reflect this knowledge to the other side. We must be extremely careful never to give the enemy any cause to question our benign intent. We must avoid using any words or committing any acts which might even suggest that we were pursuing a goal of victory. We can't afford to gamble on what the enemy might do in response. In other words, we mustn't frighten the communists or give them any cause for self-defensive panic. In fact, to take it one step further, we must...
There have been 15 years of appeals delaying justice for the victims' families. Lou?
Lisa, thank you very much. Lisa, the U.S. Supreme Court today heard arguments over the death penalty conviction of an illegal alien from Mexico in the brutal rape and murder of 2 teenage girls in Texas. The highly unusual case involves President Bush. The president now wants to stop the execution of the Mexican citizen, even though President Bush presided over more than 150 executions while he was governor of the state of Texas.
And abide by those decisions, regardless of the outcome. And above all, we must turn over our most powerful weapons and even our armies to international control, so that the new world government will possess sufficient military might to compel the various political subdivisions by force, if necessary, to comply with the dictates of its laws and the decrees of its court. Now, to be sure, we prefer not to have to do any of these things, because obviously, if we're going to merge with other countries, other cultures, other legal systems and political ideologies, we can't expect the whole world to adopt our way of doing things. It'll be a give and take situation in which we'll have to seek a common denominator, a middle ground between our way of life and the way things are done in other parts of the world. And of course, the result of such a compromise of systems predictably would have to be a mixture of the volatile dictatorships of Latin America, the tribal customs of newly emerging Africa, and the socialist regimes of Europe and Asia. Add to this concoction the necessity to absorb the doctrines and methods of communist regimes, and it's rather obvious that we're just going to have to give up certain cherished traditions and customs and learn to adjust to a way of life substantially different from that which we inherited. But it won't be so bad.
No. And let's see where we're at right now. At an hour and 20, we're going to break in here. These two guys, man. Did you hear that joke there, Luther? I said that guy looked like you. That was a good one, huh? You guys ever read those Proverbs? You ever check them out? They're pretty good. I want to read that one about Proverbs chapter 5. Now, here's one of the smartest things that, I ever listened to. Because, man, I'm telling you, everybody I've seen that gets in there think, I'll just tip my toe down there. Man. And it's always the Lord that I'm not saying I got no superpowers. I just never met a Bathsheba, because I'm not saying I'm better than David in any way, shape, or form. But the Lord has been merciful, so important to him. And there's not only that, this is just such a packed. A lot of people don't read it because maybe they have a guilty conscience or I don't know, but let's get past that and let's just look at what the whole chapter says. Verse 1, and that's going to be, I'm going to not be naming every verse, not naming it, just announcing its assigned letter. My son, be attentive to my wisdom, incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is as wormwood, You know, nobody knows exactly what that is, but we can all agree it's not good. She is as bitter as that not good, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow to the path of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. Oh, now, O sons, listen to me and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless, lest strangers take their fill of your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. And at the end of your life, you groan when your flesh and body are consumed, and you say, oh, here's what we're here for. I've had some friends, and we were good friends. But man, when it came time for class or anything like that, they could just never realize it's time to, you know, so let's say we all got caught having other girls turn our homework in. And now it's, you know, they're, you know, there's no more detentions. It's going to, you know, they're really going to kick you out. You've seen them do it before, so you got to study. They still won't do it. Man, you got to learn eventually if you want to be on the team, if you want to do the thing, you got to play the game, man. You can't think that discipline is something that they're just like, I'm mad at you for no reason. Yeah, can people go overboard? Right. Do some foreigners make bad decisions and just do horrible things? Yes, but is it any more percentage than it's already going on in the people that live here? Did John Wayne Gacy cross the border? Did Jeffrey Dahmer? I could make the list go on, Dylan Klebold, because I know that the Columbine is still fresh on people's minds. Oh, wait, it's probably not. But did you know that was the first time the cops showed their true colors? They wouldn't go into the school for 2 hours. And when finally they let the children out, they told them, no backpacks, keep your hands in the air. You're all considered suspects. Stay in line or we'll shoot you. And they had their guns drawn when they came out the door at Columbine. It's a wild flower. It grows in Colorado. It's used for medicines. But now, don't be ever a fool that despises reproof. And you may have heard that God chastens those he loves. And you say, how I hate discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad? Let streams of water in the streets. What? Would it help if I read it right? Did I read it right? Only one way to know. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. A lovely deer, a graceful doe, let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman, and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly, he's led astray. My son, if you have put up surety for your neighbor, have given your pledge for a stranger, if you are snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself, for you have come into the hand of your neighbor. If you have, for you have come into the hands of your neighbor, you're worried about your bills, go, hasten, plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eye no sleep and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. Go to the ant. Man, go to the ant, you luggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in the summer. Ant. I don't think it really meant ant, but you know, she prepares her bread in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. But if ants do make bread, you know, power to them. And I've been wrong. It's like, oh, really? You've been wrong. Oh my gosh, no, really. How long ago will you live? How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When you arise, that's the word I was looking for. O sluggard, when you arise from your sleep, when will you? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, like a armed man. Want will grab you, a worthless person, a wicked, you know, you'll sit there, I can't go out because there's a lion in the street. But the word arise, you know, I'm not putting that on you, because there's a lot of these verses. I've done this study before. This is Tegum, not Targum, you Hebrew roots people. I'll bet you all were forced going, like, at one time going around telling people, no, Jesus' name is Yawahushi. I'm just kidding. Somehow God is the one that does the rising up, is what I'm hoping this says here. Thou shalt rise up. You, Ayo, gray beard, rise up. Now thy kingdom. Oh, now if it doesn't rise up, that's bad. So we'll count that as God's in control of the kingdoms. Him that layeth at him cannot hold. Some of these verses we're going to have to look up. Thou shalt arise and have mercy. Well, that's Psalm 102. So that is God rising up the people. That's what this getting at, is every now and then. And I think you feel it right now. Maybe you guys are feeling like, maybe I should, you know, instead of going down to Goodwill and moving up, you know, buying 4 new pairs of pants in size 38 or 40, well, maybe you better skip that extra biscuit for breakfast, Buster. Time is running out. It's time to rise up. Maybe some of you guys been doing an extra push-up. Nobody made you do it. You just thought it was a good idea. And that's the problem. Some of those people that just reject anything, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes if you want to rise up, you have to be strong enough to pull somebody up if they ask for help. That's good. That was a good one. Even now and then, even my daughters every now and then go like, okay, that was a good one. That was a good one. You got to get strong enough, or how are you going to pull somebody up if they ask for help? Work with that one. A lot of times, if you ever, you know, I know we're watching videos tonight, right? Or we were reading the Rise Up chapter. I also wanted to look up that. It was on my heart, so I think I'll share it. That New Testament has a lot of good stuff too. And in it is very famous, almost like a Hitler type person, changed his colors and became an apostle and did more good. Even if, like I said, he was a Hitler type. He would go like kill the women and children too, you know, honestly. and even killed one of Apostle Peter's friends, the man that Peter made the first saint. His name was Stephen. Well, Paul wasn't the actual killer, but he had this platoon of people that would kill people, and so he had them stone him. And then 15 years later, when Jesus had saved Paul, oh man, I am not going to finish the story because I will start crying, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not gonna play that game where it's like, like, oh, you're a baby. People tell me that I'm a big faker. But I wanted to get to this one part and I don't know where it is, where it's like it's the third time I'm coming to you, and this time I'm bringing the preacher that's really good at preaching. You guys know that verse? This is the third time I come in unto you. But here's a good verse for us on the topic we're studying. 1 Corinthians 15:51. It's what they call a palindrome. It's the same numbers forward and backwards. Flip it over, it's the same, inverted. Palindrome. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. Now, this was addressed to, hey, you Christians that live there. We know who he's talking about. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and we just heard about that, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed. Those people then. For this perishable body must put on the imperishable, and the mortal body must put on immortality. When the perishable puts on the imperishable, and the mortal puts on immortality, metamorphically and metamorphously speaking. Well, that's the same thing. Metamorphosis. Oh, I did do something with those words. Well, that's kind of a good one too. But, if some of you guys think it's clever, a lot of people will say that's just freaking stupid. When the perishable puts on the imperishable and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that is written. We all know that one. That's not the guy that was such a good preacher. Where was that? That'll give it to me. 12:14. I bet it's in this chapter. I hope it is. So, hey, I've been there doing that. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness, said the Lord. That's why Paul said, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamity. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Signs of apostle worked by him, big time. Big time. Here for the third time, I am ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden, for I seek not what is yours, but you, for children are not obligated to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. This is a real parenting sermon. I will most gladly spend and be spent for your souls if I love you more. Am I to be loved less? But granting that I myself did not burden you, I was crafty, you say, and got the better of you by deceit. Did I take advantage of you through any of those whom I sent to you? I urged Titus to go and sent the brother with him. Did Titus take advantage of you? Did we not act in the same spirit? Did we not take the same steps? Have you been thinking all along that we have been defending ourselves to you? It is in the sight of God that we have been speaking Christ, and all for your upbuilding, beloved. For I fear that perhaps when I come, I may find you not as I wish, and that you may find me not as you wish, that perhaps there may be quarreling, jealousy, anger, hostility, slander, gossip, conceit, and disorder in the court. I fear that when I come again, my God may humble me before you, and I may have to mourn over many of those who sinned earlier and have not repented of the impurity, sexual immorality, and sensuality that they have practiced. This is the third time I'm coming to you. Every charge must be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. I warned those who sinned before and all the others, and I warn them now while absent, as I did when present on my second trip, that if I come again, I will not spare them. Since you seek the proof that Christ is speaking in me, he is not weak in dealing with you, but is powerful among you. For he was crucified in weakness, but lives by the power of God. For we also are weak in him, but in dealing with you, we will live with him by the power of God. Examine yourself to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourself. Or do you not realize this about yourself? That Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test. I hope you will find out that we have not failed the test, but we pray to God that you may not do wrong. Not that we may appear to have met the test, but that you may do what is right, though we may seem to have failed. For we cannot do anything against the truth, but only for the truth. For we are glad when we are weak and you are strong. Your restoration is what we pray for. For this reason, I write these things while I am away for you, that when I come, I may not have to be severe in my use of the authority that the Lord has given me for building up and not for tearing down. Finally, brothers, rejoice. Aim for restoration. Comfort one another. Agree to live in peace with one another. And the God of love and peace will be with you. Greet one another with a holy kiss. All the saints greet you. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. Now, I wonder when he was bringing that. Maybe that was in that one that they call the First Corinthians. Like I said, Second Corinthians, because that's where I thought it was. I even looked it up, remember, with the third time. But anyway, Paul one time said, hey, I'm going to come and bring this great speaker to you. Huh. Oh, wait, here it isn't. But he was going to put all things in subjection to Jesus. There are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies. I'm skimming ahead. Did you know that the last Adam became a life-giving spirit? We've covered that. Mystery, blood, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom. It must be when he's greeting all those people, but if not, we're going, this was not, it's not like there's not some great speaker that Paul was bringing with him to preach somewhere. And it was to these Corinthians. I want to go on the record as that much. Can't be wrong about this one verse all night long. This is interesting. Verse 5. I will visit you after passing through Macedonia, for I intend to pass through Macedonia, and perhaps I will stay with you or even spend the winter so that you may help me on my journey wherever I go. For I do not want to see you now just in passing. I hope to spend some time with you if the Lord permits. But I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a wide door of effective work has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. When Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Now, now, here we go. Everybody's been asking about Apollos. Now, concerning Apollos, I strongly urged him, and Paul had some swag, as they say. I know that's what you guys go like. He got swing, he got the swag, or you got the gravitas, whatever you got there. I strongly urged him, but still Apollo said, nah. I strongly urged him to visit you with the other brothers, but it was not at all his will to come now. He will come when he has the opportunity. Elvis is not coming to your building. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. Now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanus were the first converts in Arcadia. They were that. And that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such, under authority as these, and to every fellow worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanus and Fortunatus and Achaeus, and because they have made up for your absence. For they refreshed my spirit as well as yours. And so they greet, but they still didn't say that speaker that everybody likes. I wonder where that was. Did I read from 12? No, I didn't. But I won't, don't worry. That stuff about speaking in tongues is weird, huh? A lot of people are like, we gotta speak in tongues. I know I have a friend, man, named Bobby. He's a good golfer too. He speaks in tongues. Yeah, we're sharing. Hooray! That gain of function, that GH, that a lot of times, like in my name, is he, they sometimes don't, isn't that a different, like a J sound too? Hain, I was afraid some people might not thought they'd be gain of function. And I don't mind saying gain of function. I just thought so mysterious or something. I don't know what I was thinking. Look at that guy. Hey, what's an antipode? I was looking up antipodes. That's cool. I wonder how I got there. Oh, look, this is a big map. So we can't look at it all. No, you want to. It's called the Cloverleaf map. Look what's in the middle. Hold on to your hat. It's Jerusalem. Doesn't that look like a typewriter that missed a... Does that look handwritten or typewritten? Like the M might get used more because it's a more commonly used letter. But the E's, they get used a lot too. Wonder what these are, the dates that they were invented. Hey, look, there's Libya. They made it. See, I think this is so fake. I think they just typed it up or something. So I was looking at that. I must have looked it straight up from there. Maybe I heard about it right here. Oh no. I bought something, I think. I did. I bought a t-shirt. You guys are going to be seeing some new t-shirt action here. Where's it show my order at? Oh, I'm not on Amazon. Never mind. So somebody, Conspiracy R Us, has these videos on BitChute. This must be his backup channel. Backup channel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another video. Today, we're going to be talking about the Adjustment Bureau Part 2, and I would recommend watching Part 1 prior to watching this video. Now, having said that, I'm going to be building off of some of the ideas that I touched on in Part 1, and one of those was this notion of
hey, that looks like Alex Jones.
This concept that there are people put into truth communities to sort of control narratives, steer conversations in certain directions. And one of those people that I believe,
oh my goodness,
that I sort of identified as this.
I didn't know this was coming. You know that. Do you know that this red one, the pastor of our church, Lakeview Presbyterian Church, he had one of these and he rented it out to help make the payments on it. And he still had to go to a store and rent if you wanted to get the lens. Renting the lens is where the money adds up. We were just talking about this guy, and this was only 2001. He's on to him too. Oh no, he's going back to 2019. He's on to him. He must have been paying attention. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Lord. No, really. Thank you, Lord.
A content creator on YouTube called Andreas Exertus, and I believe his real name is Andreas Nicholas, but what got me interested in him, into looking into his background, was there's this one video on his YouTube channel, and it had this thumbnail, which is this blatant one-eye symbolism. But as I continued to watch this video, and I detailed this in the previous, in part 1 in greater detail, but like 9 seconds into the video, there was this all-seeing eye, and throughout the video, there's all this blatant symbolism, and I'll briefly touch on a couple points just to set the stage. But so I noticed this one-eye symbolism about 9 seconds into the video, so I wanted to see what was happening prior to witnessing this this particular symbolism that's on his shirt. And so I captured 3 snapshots from 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds. So at 8 seconds, he actually, with his recording device, he starts really low, and then he pans up to capture that shirt. And then at 10 seconds, you just see his head. But to get into this position, he actually had to go on his tiptoes, and his heels are completely off the ground and his knees are splayed outwards. So he intentionally got into this pose to capture his shirt. And this is just, like I said, like 10 seconds in. And so my attention was piqued. And going towards the end of the video, there's just this instance where he is standing in front of, I believe it's a projection of Houdini, and he's standing in front of
he's just practicing with his band.
Again, you know, things can happen. You can stand somewhere accidentally, but then he throws up this hand sign while standing, you know, in front of one eye. Yeah, so you have
He's practicing with his band or probably trying to practice his moves or something.
this double symbolism. And I just wanted to show you in this video, he was giving a tour of this studio space, and you have a green screen in the background here. So this was all set up, this projection, him flashing the hand signs. And again, I go into greater detail in part one, but this was all very intentional. And it all started with the green screen, and it all, you have this notion like he's standing in this position to capture this shirt, and he chose that thumbnail, and so it's just all very intentional. So definitely grabbed my attention. And we see other famous celebrities flashing this dual symbolism, but where this video picks up is that he does an interesting thing at the end of that video, and it's at the 14-minute mark, 13 seconds, where as soon as he flashes this hand sign, he then says, "I am the media now." It just seemed like an odd thing to say, and it reminded me of a video I saw from Mark Sargent of Flat Earth fame back in, I guess it would have been about 2016, and he did this video with he was being interviewed, I guess, kind of informally by Orphan Red. And it's a short video, but in this particular video, he's declared the king of the flat earth on YouTube and in other places. I believe that's the wording that was used when Orphan Red introduced Mark, in this graphic of a crown was put on his head. But while that's being said, he flashes sort of this interesting hand sign, and it just sort of seems out of place to his profile of videos. But I just remember thinking it was odd, and then within the next year or two, he sort of really goes mainstream, starts getting on all sorts of mainstream news programs, interviews, and as well as being a main part of that Netflix documentary. So this idea was sort of, maybe this was like a signal of some sort. So I expected, if my theory held true, I expected to see at some point in the relative near future, I expected to see Andreas Exertus start to be used in a more mainstream way, appealing to these other more mainstream audiences. And sure enough, just recently, Vice TV had a series called In My Own World, and I think it was an 8-part series. And Andreas Exertus, he is primarily featured in one of these episodes. And Vice TV and Vice Media, it has a history, even though it's presented as like an alternative to the mainstream, it's got a history of large investments from mainstream sources like the Walt Disney Company, and they've collaborated with HBO and A&E and a lot of these bigger networks. So it is actually, in my view, relatively mainstream, but it's presented like it's completely alternative, and it's focused more on a younger audience. But in this one episode of this particular series called In My Own World on Vice TV, Andreas is featured, and he's presented as a hollow earther. And as the episode goes on, he is exploring underneath Mount Shasta, I believe, and it's pretty interesting. But then there's this whole element to the episode where a therapist is brought in, and he's talking about the relationship he has with his family because of his beliefs. And there's just nothing about this seems organic at all. Can you just reverse it? Like, imagine me or you, we got asked to be on Vice and featured in an episode talking about Hollow Earth. And oh yeah, by the way, we want to bring in a therapist and talk about your interpersonal relationships. It just all seems very synthetic to me, but I think it ties into that symbolism. To work with these more mainstream sources, to be picked, I think you kind of have to put forth some symbols, whether they're in videos or by other means, and certain people get picked. That's just sort of my view, and I think he's been sort of handpicked here, and so he got put in this episode of Vice. That's my view. And when you go back and look at some of the tags associated with this particular, I think it's the season finale, and you look at some of the tags for this episode, therapy, fringe, fake news, online communities. So I can see how a whole narrative is being crafted here, because I actually watched a few other episodes, and they, at least I think I watched about 4. And in every episode, a therapist was brought in, and I can see how like online communities are being painted here in a certain light. And just this whole therapist angle, I don't know, I find it a little bit troubling just because it seems like there's an agenda behind it. But that's just me. But again, so first comes the symbolism, and then certain people who flash a lot of that symbolism, they get put on these more mainstream programs, mainstream interviews. That's my speculation. And Andreas has gone on to also appear on another YouTube channel called Castle, and he's got his recent Targaryen shirt on. But of course, just like a lot of these people, some of these YouTube channels, they have these IMDb pages, and under reality TV, you have this YouTube channel, and it stars this Tim Pool and Andreas Nicholas, aka Andreas Exertus. So I just think this whole thing is this is just how they shape the narrative. Whole YouTube channels, content providers, these people they flash symbolism, they get picked for more mainstream endeavors, and that's just my view. But here's some of the cast, as I just pointed out. So interesting for Castle. So interesting stuff. And Andreas does a ton of podcasts. These are just a few of them. And this other gentleman, I think his name is Alex Stein. Andreas was on his podcast, but this person, he also, when you look at his channel, it's just this blatant one-eye pyramid symbolism. And when you look at some of his videos, he tags them with CC33. And he's been on other podcasts or videos where he flashes Masonic symbolism, and sure enough, this person also, probably in the last few months, he's been appearing on like mainstream news programs, and this was NBC News and the Today Show, I believe. But none of this is, in my view, organic. It's just, if you're in the network flashing these symbols, you get asked to do bigger things with regards to the mainstream. Now, just when you thought things couldn't get weirder, there's a tie-in to Bob, this research that I've been doing, primarily in the Nephilim Look Like Clown series, where I talk about this figure, Bob, B-O-B, and you find this character, Bob Dobbs, or at least Bob on the Illuminati card game. Bob is featured, and there's this fictional person by the name of Bob Dobbs, and B.O.B. it just randomly shows up for advertising campaigns, and rappers have that name, and Bob appears as like a possessing spirit in TV shows. And as I mentioned, this Bob Dobbs, he figures into this fictional religion, and like I said, he's on the Illuminati card game. And Bob Dobbs, that phrase Bob Dobalina, is repeated in like 3 different songs. I've covered this in some of my other videos. But so there's this interesting aspect to this Bob, B-O-B, and on this one particular podcast that Andreas Exertus was on, at the end of the podcast, Bob comes up, and I just want to play you 20 seconds of this particular podcast where Bob comes up and features Andreas. So I'm going to play that, and then I'm just going to sign off after that.
And yeah, I actually got in touch with Ivan Stang, one of the founders of the Church of the Subgenius. I don't know if you recommend.
I'm really happy to talk to Stan. You let him know I'm the free incarnation of Bob. I'm happy to
do.
Will
do.
Bob, you said Bob, bro.
I'm the free incarnation of Bob.
Maybe I'll have you.
Bob.
Starts low, but to start low, his testimony. He does he snuck in, him and his cameraman. They entered this camp, this Bohemian Grove, with a hidden camera, and they filmed this ceremony called the Cremation of Care. Now, I guess what I'm suggesting is if he was an honest, real person looking for the truth wherever it leads, and he actually managed to get this video and sneak it out, it would never come to light. We would have never heard about it, and we definitely, the Washington Post, which is where this article is from, they wouldn't have covered it. So I think the reason why we even hear about it, it's to build him up as this figure, so that we'll trust him. Because if he can pull this off, obviously we can trust him. But meanwhile, this was probably all set up, and he gets to go on shows like The View. Now, again, September 11th, right? There's this architects and engineers for 9/11, and they get to go on C-SPAN, and they do every September 11th they go on this media tour. They get interviewed. They never really get anywhere, but they get interviewed a lot. But meanwhile, you got people like Dr. Judy Wood, and this is just the saying, real whistleblowers don't show up on your evening news. The architects and engineers for 9/11, they don't even really reference her and her work. And I'm not.
Let's take up on Dr. Judy Wood.
So we're going to learn is that the towers didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground, but turned into dust in midair. That's not a collapse, that's dust squirting up.
Hey, isn't that funny? I mean, it's not funny, but there's certain people out there in the audience that go like, isn't that a coincidence? Well, it's not a coincidence, because you just saw this happen live. And now we're right on, hey, look what I'm using for my green screen the last couple of weeks. Check it out. I believe in with all my heart. I am doing this for a reason. I believe with all my heart. You are here for a reason.
Why did so few people see that? Because they were told to see a collapse, maybe? There's three main things that keep people from seeing what's going on. Problem-solving skills, groupthink, peer pressure, and that they're terrified by the implications. We're going to just focus on the problem-solving aspect. If I tell you the answer is 27, am I right? Well, what's the question? What's the problem I'm solving? If you don't know the problem, how do you know if the answer is right or wrong? You first have to define a problem before you can solve it. And it can be referred to as a syntax error, because the order matters. So if I'm doing this math, are you adding those numbers together first or multiplying these first? You'll end up with a different answer depending on how you group them. The same thing with crime solving or with problem solving. The order matters. So if you start out with a theory, we have thermite, or we have bombs, or we have airplanes, or whatever theory someone has, and they take their pick from this list of things, and then they go cherry picking and searching for the data that's going to support their theory. So in essence, what they've done is determine the problem. But what happens if it was something else that they didn't take into consideration? They'll never get to the right answer. And that actually is one of the key things in a cover-up. You get people arguing about guesses, about assumptions about what the problem is, and they never look at the problem. If you don't look at the problem, you can't solve it. So what they're using is a theory to determine what happened. That's the wrong direction. We have to start out with what happened. You collect data, and the data always tells you what happened. And from that, you determine how it happened. But only after you first establish what happened can you determine how it happened. If you don't know what it is, you can't determine how it happened. For example, look at these beams falling with dust trailing behind them, opaque dust. Let's say you're going to impersonate one of those beams. So you cover yourself with dust and jump off the top of the building. From the ground up, would someone see that dust trailing off of you? No. You need more dust. Okay, let's say you get a couple of armloads of flour and eject it out as you're falling. Can you impersonate this? No, that's opaque dust. It initially blocked out all of the sunlight, 100% of the sunlight, so it was pitch black. It's very dense dust. And you come to the realization that these pieces of material are becoming dust. They're frothing up into dust as they fall. And they didn't hit the ground. But if you didn't know that these turn to dust, and you start out with an assumption, you wouldn't get to the right answer, because do you know of anything that could turn a building to dust in midair? Something turned it to dust in midair. So it's important to first determine what happened, then how it happened, and only then who did it or why they did it. But again, we're just going to focus on what happened. The towers didn't slam to the ground. If they'd slammed to the ground, there'd be over 1 million tons of debris left stacked up in the ground. That didn't happen. Manhattan would have been flooded. Well, as we'll see, the towers were built in the Hudson River with a dike around them. If you slam 1 million tons of debris down onto the dike, you're going to break it. Didn't happen. And if you slammed 1 million tons of debris to the ground, it's going to make a thud. The seismic signals did not reflect that. Those are the 3 biggest issues, but there's a whole lot of others as well. But we'll focus on those initially. The lack of debris, the fact the bathtub wasn't damaged, and the low seismic recordings. There's all sorts of other things, and toasted cars, of course, is one of the favorite things. And then in the second part, I talk about other pieces of information, other data that shows more about what technology is involved. But remember, you first have to establish what happened. Now we're going to look from B1 and B2 positions as well as from C, referred to as the spire. There's that clump of core columns from Tower 1 that seems to remain just a little bit after the rest and then turns to dust. I'm sort of expecting or suspicious that is right above where those 14 people survived, who thought they would be crushed and looked up and saw blue sky. Here's Tower 1 coming apart, and it peels away like peeling a banana, and left with these little spires sticking up. That's about 700 feet tall. It's got to be pretty strong to be standing unsupported that tall. Here's Building 7, which is a 47-story building. It's like 650 feet tall, approximately. This has got to be over that. And here's a closer view, and then it starts to drop down and kind of faints, turns to dust. Now, if that thing tipped over, it would take out a few blocks worth of buildings. How's it going to go straight down? You got a 700-foot hole in the ground to drop it into? Okay, for argument's sake, let's pretend we do have a 700-foot hole we're going to drop it into. And you're saying that that's dust that shook off it that settled back here? That's blue sky around that. That's not dust gradually settling. If dust is that fine to hang in the air, it wouldn't be settled on it in that amount of time. So we know it doesn't have much time at all for dust to settle on it. And right after that, here it is from a slightly different angle. There's this faint. Just faints and dustifies. Pretty neat trick. Now we're going to look at still frames from yet a different position. Remember, it peels away like a banana, leaves it exposed. Blue sky, crisp edges. That's not dust settling on it. And then it comes to the point where it no longer has crisp edges and dustifies. Now
Dustified.
the river. Yet a different angle. You can see it turning to dust. You know, it isn't tipping over in any particular direction. Oh, let me back up on that one. Oops, I backed up too fast. Okay. See how the dust cloud is sort of wrapping around this building? It's a little bit more wrapped around. So you can tell there's not much time has passed between those two images.
Good morning, John. In 2012, on September 11th, a group of militants attacked the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Now, 3 years later, if you live in America, the word Benghazi is either one of those words that gets you real riled up, or it's a word that if you hear it, you're gotta get ready to run away from whatever nearby person is about to get real riled up. It's one of those topics that you either know a whole lot about, or you know pretty much nothing about. And the trouble is, learning about Benghazi is, no matter what, going to expose you to a great deal of partisan anger. Figuring out why this is, what actually happened, what it means, and hopefully removing it a little bit from that crazy, angry partisan grandstanding is what we're going to try to do in the next 7 minutes. Let's start out with Benghazi, which, despite the fact that every American has heard of it as, at minimum, a site of a tragedy, at maximum, a site of a massive conspiracy, is actually a city in Libya. It's big. It's about 600,000 people, roughly the size of Denver, Colorado. In 2009, a pro-democracy protest broke out in Benghazi, which then spread across the entire country and eventually resulted in the first Libyan civil war. Revolutions are very exciting. They promise the possibility of rapid change for good. And that's exactly what we were all hoping for after Muammar Gaddafi, generally accepted to be a pretty bad dude, was killed and his government toppled. Unfortunately, the usual immediate outcome of a revolution is a power vacuum followed by groups of people who want very badly to control the future of their country with guns. There was a great deal of hope that Libya, and especially Benghazi, where the protests first began, would find a quick path to stability. And depending on who you ask, the Obama administration was either too optimistic about this or criminally negligent in pretending that it was all okay when it really wasn't, and they just wanted to pretend it was for political reasons. Let's get this straight. In this story, there will be two sides to absolutely everything, and both of those sides want very badly to control the future of their country. Yeah, with incessant yammering on cable news and 85 different congressional committees. but thankfully without guns. Now, there isn't much controversy about what actually happened on September 11, 2012. A group of armed militants easily breached the consulate. Security experts attempted to gather all of the personnel and move them to the safety of a nearby CIA compound that was much more easily defensible. Two people, Ambassador Chris Stevens and diplomat Sean Smith, were in a safe room after the compound was lit on fire. Both of them died of smoke inhalation. The rest of the consulate staff was taken
And then they were raped.
CIA compound, which was then later attacked as well. There, two security officers, both former Navy SEALs Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods, were killed by mortar fire. It was believed that Ambassador Stevens might still be alive. His body wasn't found at the consulate, but it turned out that a group of Libyans had tried to rescue him, pulled him out of the building, and taken him to a nearby hospital where doctors were unable to resuscitate him. Some people saw pictures of the local Libyans trying to help Ambassador Stevens and put text on those images saying that he was being attacked or tortured by those Libyans, just to give you an idea of the kind of constant and deep misinformation we're dealing with here. So this was an awful thing that happened. It was a terrorist attack. It was a tragedy. And what you think about it depends largely on how you feel about President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who was at the time head of the State Department. People predisposed to distrusting the Democratic leadership tend to believe that they made grave mistakes and were criminally negligent and have so far successfully covered up their criminal negligence, while people who find it easier to trust Clinton and Obama tend to accept the State Department's version of events. And that version indeed says that grave mistakes were made in not preparing the consulate for the instability of the situation, and that they could have been more responsive, and that they were not. But it doesn't go any deeper than that, and it doesn't go any further up the food chain than that. Those who distrust the Democratic leadership say that Clinton and Obama had a vested interest in downplaying the severity of the attack, and yeah, maybe they did. Nobody wants to have a terrorist attack on their record. This viewpoint is upheld by the fact that immediately after the attack, the CIA indicated and the administration repeated that the attack was just sort of a natural outgrowth of protests that were happening because of an anti-Islam film, when in fact it was definitely a planned and organized terrorist attack. This was all very close to the 2012 election. Obama didn't want to be talking about how he'd let a terrorist attack happen. It was weeks before he even used the word terrorist. But downplaying a crisis after it's happened is, at least to me, very far away from criminal negligence. Other accusations, like that then Secretary Clinton called off troops that could have helped, have been proved over and over again to just be made up. But the State Department did make mistakes. They could have and should have done more to protect the consulate. But those shortcomings have been acknowledged, and indeed they were. The Benghazi attack has become so entrenched that there are a lot of people.
Hey, look, I know these people. They want to see a bomb going off, man. Where's the bombs going off?
Was one of those rare events that most people remember exactly what it was when they first saw it. So perhaps we take it for granted that everybody knows what it is, or would at least recognize it. But is that really the case? Especially in some of the places that have been most affected by its consequences.
And then, of course, just in the course of our patrolling and whatnot, a lot of the local characters we know pretty well. We passed the local village idiot on the way in, a buddy of ours.
Mining team. One of the Marines wanted to comment on their silence when asked about 9/11.
So that not so much eerie, but understood silence between each other. Remind you of all why you're here, exactly what you're doing here. But some of us still, still have a personal vendetta with the beings that roam here, being the Taliban, and still connect that to 9/11. I do myself. And, here comes the 10-year anniversary, and I still find it very personal.
There to go.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it. They're saying I just can see the smoke on the building, and that's it. That's the only thing I can say. Saying when you guys showed us picture, that guy saying yes, I think that was. They attacked New York and they killed most of the people. They destroyed.
Man, he's pretty good with that phone. Just seems like natural to him. Well, just checking.
Eine Mutter greift nach ihrem Kind und ist total entsetzt. Sie kann es nicht begreifen, denn sein Körper ist zerfetzt. Es war einer dieser Tage, an dem alles friedlich war. Da stand auf einmal dieser Panzer von den Feinden, die in ihre Heimat kamen. Plötzlich dreht den Turm einfach so hier. Landmutter und den Sohn er macht die Scheine noch auf dem Panzer zu. Das ist schon mal ganz schön gut. Ich sagte, Johnson.
A little too loud.
Eine Mutter greift nach ihrem Kind und ist total entsetzt.
The world's big. The world is big, and we only get to see what they show us. True or false? True or false? We only get to see what they show us. Man, I'm glad to see y'all here. I know Alex Stein has been all over. He's from Houston here. And, you know, again, remember when they were going to have the new thing on that baby flat earthers, and Alex Stein's on that show. And they had Awake Souls on. And then they said, we want to give our platform to other people that have new ideas. And I contacted them that day and I said, hey, here's a flat earther that teaches Armageddon's over. And I got 2 emails from him. I'm not going to look him up. I showed him before. And he's going, it sounds great. Let's do it. And then he wrote me back, nah, you know, people might think it's silly. So we're not going to do that segment anymore. I just think that's crazy. But they're not going to stop it. Because the reason that I think we're going to be okay is going to come down to it's not going to be economically feasible for them to come get it. But we are going to need some people that, because if something's coming here, and I'm going to stand by what I said when, you know, Static, you know, the video before Static in the Attic acted like he never heard of me. I was saying before, there's plenty of ways that we can be nonviolent and let them know that we mean business. And you guys starting it with, you know, if you're going to go to a protest or something like that, what they, you know, super glue their car doors shut, make them walk home. You can do things without burning down their buildings. You shouldn't be in the cities anyway. But there's plenty of different things. And I know Churchill, Roosevelt, those people, they hated Gandhi. And he was no saint, and neither was Mother Teresa. You know, it was all about the money. But there are really people that aren't in it for the money. Take me. I'll preach for oatmeal, bananas, and peanut butter and jelly. Now, did I say Sergeant in the Attic? I mean, Static in the Attic. After all, you can trust him. He's a contractor. But, you know, that's a lot. That's 2 hours and 30 minutes of, it's 10 o'clock now. So you know, we could let's keep going. These are good, aren't they? I think they're interesting. Let's see. That was Judy Wood. We saw the dustification.
Now we're going to get into the proof of concept. I can't say for sure what technology was used, but I can show you something that reproduces all of the same phenomena. Seen this guy, Nikola Tesla. He can generate all of these various pieces of evidence, all these different phenomena. So can John Hutchison. When he tried to replicate the work of Nikola Tesla, he discovered all these characteristics. And all of those characteristics were found at the World Trade Center site. Let's notice this metal luminescence without heat. Now, hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. George Pigott got a patent just about 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago. Levitation. He's got a static field, and he's doing some other things with putting in some kind of energy, and he's got these static balls, these steel balls levitating. I think they're actually silver. And Thomas Townsend Brown also looked into the same area about using electricity. And then Ed Leedskalnin, who built Coral Castle. Here's John Hutchison standing in front of the Great Pyramid. There's a person down here in the background. You can see they're almost 2 blocks tall. Well, that's about the same height as this doorway of Coral Castle. So they're about the same size blocks. They're 15 tons each. So this guy built his castle by himself. We don't know how this one was built. We can only guess. Well, let's look at how John Hutchison's more work here. This is an iron block. It's 2 inches by 2 inches by 7 inches tall, solid iron block. And when he puts it in his system, it buckles over, and you can see some fuming here. And it actually is colder to the touch at the end of this. And here we get to see it happen. And we're going to compare it to the fuming door handles from 9/11. Is it a door handle? Yep, it's a cold process. Solid iron. And this fuming, which is interesting. You know, the car window is broken open here. We're going to look at some other things about the weird fires. I can't call them regular fire because I don't know that. A weird fire, just to note that it's not something that you know for sure what it is. It's glowing, but the paper doesn't seem to burn. If this was glowing because it's hot, it'd have to be at least, 1,200 degrees centigrade. Aluminum melts at a little over 600 degrees centigrade. It's not a puddle. This aluminum is not a puddle, so how hot can it be? This igloo cooler and the plastic trash can are not melted. The paper is not burned either on the ground. So what is that color? And another weird thing about this, right across the street over here is Burger King. inside there flipping burgers, cooking burgers for the firefighters, not serving to the customers, and then the building across the street was missing. It's just a weird sight. Now this van is also interesting that, you get all this something looks like it's on fire, weird fires there. This van down here has a fire on the side of it. What's burning? And if you say falling debris that was on fire hit these vehicles, why didn't it hit anything else? And how's it under the vehicle? It's just very strange. There's park places several blocks north. There is John's boat experiment. Well, what it shows is when he turns off his gizmo, then the boat lights up with weird fires. And the cars lit up right after the tower's demise, not during, right after, as though it was right after something got turned off. This is another interesting, at the WTC, how this beam curled up. Actually, that was right across the street. That was the Banker's Trust. These are John Hutchison's samples. Notice there's no creases in the corners. I should have found a picture of him holding this one like this. Vitamins?
Nerd.
But it curls up like that, like at room temperature. And this is a video that hopefully will run. There we go. It wiggles back and forth. Now watch this thing. It's going to come apart in here. It's starting to come apart. Weird things happen. Some other weird things that happened were roundish holes in the outer pane of windows. They weren't necessarily through both panes. That's strange. Throw a rock through a window, it breaks the window because the window is brittle and it bends, and brittle materials are weak in tension, so it shatters the glass. So how do you get a round hole without cracks running out? Turns out somebody replicated that very thing. This is my analogy saying, okay, if you drop a rock in a pond, it ripples outwards. Maybe something like that is what ripples outwards with longitudinal waves that causes the glass to break in a rounded pattern. Now let's think about hurricanes. What do? Well, Hurricane Andrew drove this 2x4 through a tree. Piece of plywood. And with tornadoes, I'm sure you've all heard about straw through trees. It's not because they're flying fast. Something weird is going on. There's John Hutchison's sample with a butter knife and a piece of aluminum. He also has one with wood in the aluminum. If the aluminum's hot enough to melt, the wood would have burned up. So it's strange. Now, when I found these, you can see the blow-ups. I wondered, why on earth would the car door be peeling split thickness? It's not a laminated structure. Didn't know what that meant, but it was definitely a category of data, and I put it aside. Later, when I found John Hutchison's work, wow, he can peel open extruded aluminum. That's not laminated, it's extruded. And we have these coins from the World Trade Center. People like to say they're melted together. I'll point out that zinc melts before copper does. It also boils before copper melts. So that would likely explode, but it's one of the lowest, zinc is one of the lowest melting point materials. So what gives? Why is this stuff stuck together? And this is the only surviving file cabinet from Ben & Jerry's ice cream store. Here's the piece of wood embedded in the aluminum from John Hutchison's work without elevated temperature. Same with these.
You really don't let that pass you by. That's the only file cabinet. And they didn't find any of the sinks from any of the bathrooms or toilets.
WTC-6 with these cylindrical holes in it. Oh, here's John Hutchison's aluminum sample with cylindrical holes in it. It's as though there's a pencil line in space around which material at the same radius is dustified. And if you had a lot of those vertically here, you'd end up with dustified cylindrical columns. But there's no way you get a drill in there and turn it sideways. It's parallel to the surface, and it just starts right here. The end of this bar is solid. Let's look at some other similarities with hurricanes. Kind of like a big Tesla coil. And come to think of it, ahead of the storm system, people feel the storm coming. Birds know to head for cover. You can feel the static field ahead of the storm. Here's another thing about storm systems. I don't know if this needs a click or not. This is from this past spring in Texas, where there's a bunch of tornadoes, and you had flying trucks.
We went across a transport company, trees flying through the air, semi, the trailers, there you go, a couple of semi, look at that, the beds of the trailers twirling around in the sky and then dropping down from at least 50 feet high down into the ground. We saw trees, there goes another semi.
It's
spinning, down it comes, bang, lands on its nose right down at the ground. Big piece of a tree there that just got hurled up, I believe it was. So certainly we have seen a destructive tornado on the south side of Dallas, still within parts of the area near south of Grapevine, north of Arlington, a possible tornado in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, as well as over on the east side of Dallas, in toward the area around the Mesquite area, just to the west of Mesquite and east of that.
Those are flying trucks. I would say that's anti-gravity. It's not a vacuum. And people who've been picked up in funnel clouds can still breathe. Remember we saw before where people have been levitated during WTC2's demise, or WTC1's. So here we have also the front of Bankers Trust. This was the only non-WTC building that was severely damaged. It wasn't destroyed that day. They actually repaired it. Once they repaired it, they started taking it apart. Huh? They got it down to this level where they had repaired it in deconstruction there. When they got it down to that level, that's the area that had been repaired. That looks like it's been above the ocean for 100 years. Extreme degradation. And it makes one wonder, was the building continuing to disintegrate? And that's why they had to take it down after they repaired it. It took them 10 years to take it apart.
Let that sink in too. Man, oh man. We'll do one more.
Now we'll come back and talk about the weather. We need to talk about the weather, right? Someone thought it was a nice, beautiful day. Well, it was right directly above Manhattan, but not a few miles off the East Coast. See, it's as nice as can be. Here's Geraldo Rivera, who's chased out hurricanes for 40 years.
Have been so attracted over the years to hurricane coverage, but there's risk involved. There is, the peril of not knowing what's going to happen, that adventure, and it's pitting yourself against an enemy. It's like war, only no one is shooting at you specifically. That's what the allure. But there is an area storm that I am not, the juices don't flow, and you look and check it out.
Remember that? When that, I watched that live.
There may be a store on YouTube, you got to get up close and personal. And
This is Hurricane Ike.
this that was wasn't this Rita?
You would know.
You know what? I think it was Rita. Rita in Galveston, Texas. Yeah. Galveston. And you know, obviously Katrina before that changed so many of our histories. It was so traumatic. You know, and it's one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. Remember, they didn't know how to use instruments, the terrorists. They took off in Boston, and they literally, after they took over the aircraft, they steered by line of sight. And it was that crystal clear September day. Sure was. And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot now, and especially this time of year. So where the peak of hurricanes is.
Yeah, you're celebrating 40 years?
40 years, imagine that. 40 years. You know, longevity has its own revenge. I've outlived like 15 generations of TV critics.
Yeah.
They all predicted I'd be done in a couple of weeks.
You still get...
Everyone has those stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
This was just 2 years ago. I think this is Battery's Dead.
Nerd. I'm just kidding. Nerd.
No, doesn't seem to advance. I'm gonna click advance. This seems to be out of batteries or something.
Well, I don't know about that. Here again, you're asking us to deal with the fact that I'm not aware of. I never heard about flames or fumes. I mean, fumes coming out of a building. I'll tell you what, first of all, let me go to Steve in Florida. Steve in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead, please, with Dr. Judy Wood.
Hi, Judy. Thank you for taking my call. Am I loud and clear?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Judy, you have misrepresented the facts concerning Hurricane Aaron. I live here in hurricane country, Florida. I track all the hurricanes. Aaron hit Corpus Christi, Texas, 15 August 2007. Your opinion concerning 911 are not consistent with the facts provided on 911 ripple effect, last man out, Richard Gage's blueprint for truth, Blues Change Final Cut, Zero, an investigation into 911, and many other video documentaries. I don't know what planet you come from.
Okay. I guess he's gone. I don't know what happened to Steve.
As for Hurricane Aaron, they did not retire that name. It has been used several times. It was first hurricane, I believe, of the 2001 hurricane season.
All right, let me go back to George. George.
Well, one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. It was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was.
Yeah. And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot.
On television that morning of 9/11, this is where the hurricane was at that moment. See anything missing? This is where the hurricane was, here. The satellite, the National Hurricane Center satellite images. That's Geraldo from that time. The rest is from 9/11. Geraldo apparently didn't know there was a hurricane that day. And Joey Moore, a flight attendant on 9/11 who flew out of Boston's Logan Airport just before the fatal flight that left, did not know there was a hurricane either until he saw it on my website. That's the question. It begs the question, too. Because you know how much they like to milk those for all they can get. They love to report on hurricanes. Well, I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing if people didn't know there was a hurricane coming and you saw it was headed straight for New York, this is where the hurricane was, here.
I want to make sure that you can see that when they showed the weather when Geraldo, you know, when they show the map for that day, they don't show the hurricane. But in reality, there was a hurricane spinning right off the coast. But in reality, they don't show it. Now, this is from 2012, so that's not the same. But when he was remembering it, so I wanted to get the one where she was talking about
the satellite, the National Hurricane Center satellite images. That's Geraldo from that time. The rest is from 9/11.
So this is 9/11. Where's the hurricane at?
Yeah, Geraldo apparently didn't know there was a hurricane that day. And Joey Moore, a flight attendant on 9/11 who flew out of Boston's Logan Airport just before the fatal flight that left, did not know there was a hurricane either until he saw it on my website. That's the question. It begs the question, too. Because you know how much they like to milk those for all they can get. They love to report on hurricanes. I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing if people didn't know there was a hurricane coming and you saw it was headed straight for New York, if it hadn't turned around when it did, Manhattan would have been flooded. And how fast can you evacuate that many people from Manhattan? Can you afford that risk unless you absolutely know there's no chance? Unless you know, how would you know? Right. But it could have been used. To turn around because there was a high pressure system moving across the U.S. But then maybe on day 2 it didn't. Maybe on day 3 it didn't. Maybe on day 4. Thank goodness it did. They predicted it was going to turn around all this time, but did they really know when? If they didn't know, they ran out of room. So here we have the high pressure system moving in from the Midwest, and it's increasing, while the hurricane, which is a low pressure system, is moving in from the Atlantic. And guess where they met and when? 10 a.m. on the morning of 9/11. They were superimposed at that area, so you have 2 counter-rotating systems, curiously. And interesting drop with the humidity. But let's look at this magnetometer information. This is the Earth's magnetic field from the ground, not from satellite, but from the ground in Alaska. There's 6 different measurements. Each of the events on 9/11 are with a vertical bar. The first one is WTC1 getting an airplane-shaped hole, and WTC2. Then WTC2 goes poof, WTC1 goes poof, and then later Building 7 goes poof. I say goes poof, it didn't collapse. They turn to dust. So it's interesting. It's pretty much a steady state, and something different happens here. There was a solar storm approaching, but it didn't get to that point until a day later. So there's something else going on here. A closer look, about 20 minutes before WTC1 got its hole, that's the North Tower, they started wandering off of their average value. And as soon as WTC1 got its hole, it reverses direction. As soon as WTC2 gets its hole, it goes horizontally. It's like one reversed the other one. Maybe coincidence? And then when WTC2 goes poof, they start going downhill, but when WTC1 goes away, it really drops off the cliff. And then things are all haywire all afternoon until WTC7 reaches its demise. The Earth's magnetic field, as recorded at 6 different stations. Again, here's where they start wandering down. There's actually 3 different measurements for when the North Tower got its hole. the 9/11 Commission report, the Palisades seismographic station, and the NIST report. I can tell you which one's right based on where the turnaround happens. And see how these go horizontally after building 2 gets its hole. These are the 6 different recording stations. It's just, you know, a curious set of data.
Powerful, powerful information right there. Vortexes, tornadoes, torpedoes, you name it. Everything is just completely out of control.
Lack of debris. Again, if over 1 million tons of debris slammed the ground, you'd see a pile of debris left over. All right, you go to work on a nice September morning, and there's Tower 1, there's Tower 2, and you work down here in Bankers Trust. So you're going to go into your office there in Bankers Trust, and then you're going to look out the window and see what you can see. Down here, you look out the window. What's it going to look like? That's looking out that window. Air-conditioned office, looking across the street, and whoops, where did the building go? This is right after 9/11. Tower 2 is basically missing. Tower 1 is missing over there. I think everyone would have to agree there's not enough stuff left piled up on the ground. So again, it's where we're looking out there. Now we're going to look the other direction. And there's this main body that was missing. Just the north wing is left. The building just went missing. That's building 4. It was a 9-story building. So this is what was there beforehand, and it just basically all went away. And then a satellite image shows, you know, all sorts of holes that were in those buildings. The middle part of building 6 is gone. It looks like a post hole digger cored it out. You have holes over here on Liberty Street. Even some holes in Vesey Street. And notice again that north wing is remaining, but the main body's gone. And this is Bankers Trust, where you're looking out the window, seeing a non-building across the street. Few people talk about this building. It's a 22-story skyscraper. Well, it would be the tallest building in most small towns. It went away except for that last little corner. And building 7 over here as well. Every building with the WTC prefix was destroyed that day. So we're going to look at...
Do you understand that in a premillennialist theology world that's been laid out systematically, every World Trade Center building was gone that day? And we started the last 45 years.
This direction. Now, a lot of people talk about hearing the BBC announce early that Building 7 went away. Well, CNN did the same thing for 1 Liberty Plaza, but it's still there. If you just get excited and want to be the first to report. And we're going to go down and look on the ground and see what it looks like down in here. Looking at the front door of Tower 1. So here we are down on the ground. There's Tower 1, north and south walls. Ambulance was parked in front of the front door of Tower 1. It doesn't look clobbered by anything. This picture, I believe, was taken on 9/11, later in the day. I don't see any big steel beams on the ground. There's aluminum cladding. The towers were built with steel columns on the outside that were covered with aluminum cladding. And you see the aluminum cladding. The ambulance looks pretty good. This was the day after 9/11. Peter Jennings in the studio. Do we have sound?
Nerd.
Uh-oh. Well, what Peter Jennings is saying is, George, we got.
And if you've been able to answer.
Again? This is.
Stephanopoulos is down in Lower Manhattan today, George. I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd as we look at these areas down below and the video where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to answer, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinsky, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
This is vital information. I really feel for George Stephanopoulos. He's got this job telling the world what's going on there, and that's the best he could do. And we humans tend to keep asking questions until we're given an answer. We don't stop to think if the answer makes sense. So what he is telling us is that it's obvious there's a big lack of material there. And here's an elevation map of what was left. And you see building 4 went missing, the holes in building 6. Here's a firefighter in stairwell B.
I heard this very, very loud noise above me. It was just a tremendous roar.
Down here, while that picture was taken.
It was above, and it sounded like it was coming towards you, and then the wind, a very, very fierce wind, and my helmet started lifting me up off the ground, and so that's when I crouched down. The next thing I just crouched down. I got to the corner of the staircase by the railing, and I just got as small as I could possibly get. Because I'm not a big guy to begin with, so unfortunately I'm not. So I got in and I literally, I guess the best way to describe it, I tried to crawl into my fire helmet. That's what I wanted to do, just to protect myself. And I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought the building might be coming down, and I figured, this could be it, I mean, I was a little angry. I got, so like, damn it, like, why me? Why, I was beautiful. I'm going to die in the World Trade Center on a beautiful summer morning. It's like a little denial of disbelief sets in, and so then I started getting hit with stuff. Debris was hitting me, and it went dark. And then the next thing was just total silence, nothing, no wind. No noise, no light, nothing. And then I started hearing noises. I started hearing like moaning, and guys were starting to communicate, yell out. These were the guys that I was trapped with. They're calling out, who's there? You guys are right, blah, 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 this kind of thing. And I realized there was other people. I wasn't alone, because when you're alone in a situation like that, people talk, that's like existential isolation. It's like, and then when you find out you're with other people, it makes you feel a lot better. Even though you're in a very bad situation, at least there's other people. But then the strangest thing happened. This beam of sunlight came right in on us, like about 8 inches long, but it was clearly sunlight. It was all dirty, full of debris. It looked like pepper was floating around in it, sort of. But it was sunlight, and I'm like amazed now.
Yeah, that's what I think, yours. It's electromagnetic discharge.
It's the building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
He was right at the base of this
But when you
building.
came out, you had no idea where you were. There was no way to tell north, south, east, west. It was just the whole atmosphere was full of debris and papers and smoke, and there was no landmarks. There was no way to make a reference point. There was no, you couldn't see the sun anymore. The sun had gone away because the sunlight that had come in, that was gone, and so there was no way to tell which way you were going.
He was at the base of this building while this picture was being taken. And all 14 of them walked out on their own steam. Let's see. Here again is where they were. Jay Jonas was one of the ones with them and said, I looked and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. Then later said, these are the biggest buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk, one chair, one phone, nothing. Another survivor described walking out onto an empty football field. This is from the base here. This is what was there that went away. And that's where another 14 folks survived, in that little stub at the end of that first building I showed. And they had that hole in building 6 where 50% approximately of building 6 was missing. And the main body of building 4 went missing.
Every time a floor hit another floor, it would not only make a noise, but it would cause tremendous vibration. So we're being bounced up and down off the floor, hearing this collapse coming closer and closer.
Mickey Cross was caught on the 2nd floor. My helmet started flying off my head. I had forgotten to snap my helmet. So I grabbed my helmet. I guess instinctually, I just pulled myself down the corner. The collapse of the North Tower created a massive rush of air.
I was blown down 6 stories down to the first floor, and all I can remember while I was being blown down was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There wasn't any time to think about anything.
The 110-story tower disintegrated in just 10 seconds.
It was that fast, yet for me it was kind of slow motion too at the same time. And I remember thinking to myself, I said, oh shit, this is it, we didn't make it.
Faced with what seemed like certain death, the trapped firemen thought their last thoughts and prepared to die.
In those 10 seconds, I thought of...
Do you see his helmet number? 6669.
I was like, well, I'm 33. What have I done with my life? Worked almost all the time. My wife is going to be a widow now. And I pretty much saw myself... pretty much saw my funeral. I saw everybody at the wake at my funeral, and my parents and family there.
You think about everything I guess that you haven't done in your life, and you realize that, is this it? Are you gonna make it out of here? And I was just too young, and I have too much more to do with my life than for this to be it.
I thought I was going to be dead in a few seconds, and I remember feeling, I hope this is fast, because I had a fear of being trapped, like say with a broken back or severely injured, and still being conscious and alive.
It was strange, but I was at peace when the collapse actually started. I said, oh, whatever's going to happen now is going to happen, and I hope it doesn't hurt too much, but the fear was gone.
The collapse of the North Tower killed over 1,300 people trapped inside the building. But some of the concrete walls encasing Stairway B had remained intact, and enclosed within them, 14 people were still alive. As they opened their eyes, it seemed as if a miracle had happened.
I could hear Mike. I could hear him groaning. I could hear him called out to me. I called out to him. Said no, he was alive.
You know, from the neck up, I seemed okay, but everything else was just like pins and needles. I mean, I was slapping my leg with my arm. I'm watching my arm hit my leg, but I can't feel it. I had my flashlight on my side, and I looked at my hands and looked at myself to see if I was bleeding or anything anywhere.
When he heard noises around him, Captain J. Jonas realized he too had somehow survived the disaster.
I wanted to know who was still alive. And I started calling them out by name.
All of the people in their group survived. That's a nice happy ending. But the descriptions they gave were not of a building falling on top of them, were not of bombs exploding around them. Wasn't high heat, they didn't get cooked. They didn't get squashed. The building just turned to dust above them. So we're going to look now at what was left. If we go down below the ground in that corner, well, here's what it looked like. The building indeed, the main body went missing, just like it was sliced off there. So the mall is in the first story below ground. And there's some firefighters that were walking along there. We're going to go down one story and look at them. The perspective. Here they are. That's right under that area. It's a little bit punched in down here, but you can read innovation luggage, Hallmark cards, so you know right where they are. So now we're going to go a couple of stories below that to the loading docks. And it's right below there is where they're walking, but the loading docks up above. And it's painted purple under building 5, so you know where you are, and then green under building 4. So it's color coded so the delivery trucks know where to unload. And we're going to look down that direction. Just after 9/11. Listen to the echo in this audio clip.
Nerd.
Going down to the parking garage. We're in quite deep.
These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
That's not a collapsed parking garage. That's not even a full parking garage. It's an empty parking garage. And we had this left. You can see remains of Tower 1. Stairwell B where those guys survived, and it's all at ground level. There was a lot of dirt brought in.
We were able to move 120 dump trucks out of the city last night, which will give you a sense of the work that was done overnight. So some of the debris has already been removed. More of it is being removed, and it'll be done by barge all throughout the day today.
Did you think it was going to get cleaned up in one day? Again, here's the ambulance picture and all that was left. Where's the debris of 1 million tons of building? One of the other survivors said this. And we kept telling him we're in third floor, 4th floor, stairwell B, North Tower. Where are you? North Tower, stairwell B. Where are you? Stairwell B, North. Don't you know where North Tower is? They didn't know where the North Tower was because there was nothing left.
Look at that. He goes, North Tower, stairway B, 2nd, 3rd floor. You could hear they didn't understand where they were. Keep going. My God, why aren't you listening? Then they said, where's the North Tower? I was like, what do you mean, where's the North Tower? It was unimaginable.
And do you blame them? Here's right where those guys were, up in that little corner.
Hundreds more firemen were now arriving at the disaster area, but Captain Jay Jonas's Mayday messages were still not getting through. Trapped down in the remains of Stairway B, there was nothing else Jay could do.
We realize we can't get ourselves out. And that's a big mental leap for a fireman to take. Because we're so used to being the people who are going in to rescue someone. Now, the roles are reversed and you realize you're helpless yourself.
But with the survivors buried alive beneath a debris field that extended over 16 acres, it seemed they would need another miracle to save them. It was midday on 9/11, and in the chaos and confusion, Captain Jay Jonas's Mayday messages were still not being received. The fireman had no idea there was a pocket of survivors nearby. Then Jay again tries to make radio contact. Unexpectedly, this time his call is picked up.
Now, that's another aspect that's very weird. Why didn't their radios work?
One of the officers coordinating rescue operations is Chief Nick Visconti. He responds to Jay Jonas's Mayday call.
I got a radio transmission from Nick Visconti. I heard Operations Post to Ladder 6. Operations Post to Ladder 6. This is Jay, where are you?
Okay, 10-4. North Tower, Stairwell B as in boy on the second floor.
But the location Jay gave was unbelievable to them. The North Tower no longer existed. They asked for his location again.
He asked me that a couple times, and one time he asked me that. Somebody else got on the radio saying, "Where's the North Tower?" I remember somebody saying that, "Where's the North Tower?" on the radio. And I said, "Oh shit." I says, it's not good.
Not funny
what I
either.
like about these clips from the BBC's show about the miracle in Stairwell B is that these are the original people. They're telling their story. Indeed, they're real people, and they were trapped in there and walked out. And what they experienced. Can you imagine being the base of a 110-story building and the building goes away and you're left alive? There's also a fellow who remained at the edge of that hole in building 6. His buddies didn't make it. They were a few feet away. There's Stairwell B. And just to look at the amazing aspects of this.
Now, what cut those holes in the ground? Could it be like a piece of fat in a chicken when you're microwaving it and it explodes? And sometimes it even, I've seen them move a whole leg of chicken. Chicken.
You got the bare sidewalk over here. Building 7, a 47-story building, didn't even fully spill across the street. If you had a big building coming down like that, even with explosives in it, it'd be like a machine head fire on all the adjacent buildings. Didn't happen. And this dome doesn't look clobbered. It's right across the street. You don't see that debris piled up on the ground. This is right at ground level.
All I can do is feel it. Lord, you are blessing. And this is amazing. No Cheetos. Total ripoff.
The speaker to begin this afternoon.
Yeah, it would be a little bit Madison, that there was a terror from mountains of dirt.
No. Nein tun best an Düsseldorf. We got to keep it going here. We got to roll it. We saw the dustification. That's really good. Did we see the dusted cars? Toasted cars?
Toasted cars. We got to get to the toasted cars. I say they're toast. They're history. I can't say they're burnt because I don't know that. But they're toast. I just decided to use that word to say something happened, messed them up. You can't fix it. You got to get a new one. It's history. This is a police car found on FDR Drive. I don't know how it got to, I don't know where it was toasted. There were some that were witnessed as being toasted on FDR Drive. But this one is quite interesting in that it has an abrupt, toasted, not toasted. Like it's like it's on the showroom floor. It just had a new wax job back there. What abruptly stops a real fire, a regular fire, doesn't do that. It would be lapping around the corner. Also, why aren't the lights melted? And you have the circular spot on the other side. Gas tank is still, fine. This is where all the toasted cars we're seeing that I'm aware of, as well as the toasted car lot. And the ones we're looking at were down here. And an emergency medical person said you could tell it was hot at the Trade Center because you could feel the heat from the bridge. But paper wasn't burning down here. How could somebody over here, 3/4 miles away, feel heat? Something that they perceived as heat.
And you said you saw melted tour buses, melted cars?
The cars that were right down there was just unbelievable. They were twisted and melted into nothing. The debris is just unbelievable. And then you can see fire trucks and police vehicles that were down there early that all their windows, the windshield are completely blown out must have been from when debris dropped.
But even more jarring, I think, is this scene right here. Look at these two cars placed on top of one another. I think when you think about the impact that these planes must have had, it's hard to visualize because everything melted. But here, at least you have some remnants. You have literally an engine that is melded together with other parts of the car. Moving over, you've got another car they moved here. It looks like it's been through a war. You can see the papers, all the burned out papers from the building. You see the soot and the dirt, and it just shows you how devastating this blast was. Look across the street there. You've got a Con Ed truck that, some of the Con Ed people now looking at, examining, trying to figure out which truck that actually was. But that truck, too, in terrible shape. So while many of the items, the steel,
I mean, really, all they need to do is have a guy do cartwheels behind him, and say something like "save the whales." I don't know.
was literally melted.
People who have been right down next to the base of what was the trade towers say there's virtually nothing.
We'll stop here on this toasted bus picture. You realize there's no burnt marks, no scorch marks. The toasted bus. But yeah, these poor reporters, they're doing the best they can. Remember, the evidence is the truth that a theory must mimic if the theory is correct.
Very difficult to breathe here, but look around. This must have been ground zero where this thing blew up. Car after car after car. Buses completely obliterated and burned straight down to the steel. Behind me.
He was describing it the best he could. Here's more of that street. And notice no door handles. Now that in itself isn't surprising, but we're just noticing the patterns. It seems that door latches, trunk lid latch, this door, door latches and door handles were completely gone. Also, this looks like it was sandblasted, ready for a new paint job. Not a trace of window glass left in that. And that's what seems to be a trend with the toasted vehicles. Something happens to the engine compartment too, like this one down here. And notice again this distinct abrupt line between different parts of the car. Now, often folks say, well, that's just like any old burnt car. Here are burnt cars up at the top. Notice these rings of burn marks around it. And burnt cars also have remains of window glass. See, this is clean down here. And here we have traces of window glass left. And of course, there's a lot left there. But the ones at 9/11, there's not a trace. The ones that are seriously toasted. Doesn't look like these are uniform colors, like they've been sandblasted, ready for a new paint job. And the insides are completely toasted. I think they threw this stuff in afterwards. But the stuffing is still partly here in the burnout car. So there's a bunch of cars that appear to go into spontaneous combustion up in that parking lot. And we have various views of that. And my detractors often say, well, the cars were towed. They were burned elsewhere and were just towed through junkers. But we have photos of them before, during, and after. Now here's the toasted car. See, it looks like there's flame coming out of them, but the sea of unburned paper between. The buildings over here, the towers. And here again is tower still standing. And there's the untoasted cars. They're not even toasted yet. And there they are. They haven't been toasted yet. They're still in good shape. I actually thought this car was white, but I was surprised to find it was black. And here, it's still in good shape. People are evacuating. Here it is after it's been toasted. They can't tell it was a black car. Just all in line, they just went poof. Weird fires. I can't call them a fire because there's weird things with them, like paper not burning. This is where I call the swamp. The toasted cars all along through there. And the fellow who came out that door, he's probably the one that left it open, walked up West Broadway, and it was pitch black. And then he said, thank goodness the cars started lighting up, because then he could see where he was going. He walked out of there up to intersection C and turned over towards D. At intersections along there, people said, all right, here's the firefighters going for a lunch break. They come, doo-doo-doo. They don't seem at all concerned that they're walking through this fire. They're worried about a car blowing up. Now, this is an interesting picture. Often we were shown this by certain individuals who would say, see, molten metal. But wait a minute, what's really going on here? This is an igloo cooler and a trash can that aren't melted. If this is white hot, then it's got to be, hot enough that it's going to melt this aluminum. Aluminum melts at around 660 centigrade, and it's kind of barely a beet red. You have to be like 1,000 degrees centigrade in order for it to glow. So when aluminum's glowing and it's not a puddle, something else is going on. So we're told about pools of molten metal. That's paper, not burned. Aluminum is blood red when it melts. Oops. I don't know what that is. Again, remember this temperature, and up here is where you need it to be well above where aluminum melts. But you see, this aluminum cladding appears to be glowing on the end. This corner up here. And you get these, I call them Cheetos. And in case people don't know what Cheetos are, orange thing on the ground, and you're not going to confuse that with a piece of steel. But there's these little things that look like Cheetos that are glowing. Pretty strange.
Or a steel mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Would you?
Oh, you have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal? Was it heat?
Or was it something else? Here on this thermal map that is so often quoted, point E is right next to where building 3 had been. Here's point E. According to the measurement there, it's supposed to be 819 Fahrenheit. That's above 212, the word water boils. This guy doesn't look like a boiled chicken. Yeah, how hot can that be? So the color in that map meant something else. It wasn't temperature. And nice bushy trees didn't melt. But or didn't burn, neither did the paper in the street. But what happened to these vehicles? What happened to his engine? And where that firefighter walked up the street and turned the corner, here's right where he turned the corner. Again, you have these Cheetos on the ground, whatever they are. What's strange is the fire on the side of the van in front. And again, it was a different contrast. You can see it's just on the side of the van. What's burning? This shows the apparent spontaneous combustion. This is during the cleanup. You see that thing that flashed over there? There's another slow motion clip of it. You see it over here somewhere. Oh, there it goes. Just apparent spontaneous combustion.
And I'm sorry, remember the after sparks in the acrylic? I know it was about 3 hours ago. I know it was. But some of you that know the Lichtenberg effect know that those sparks last for a long time.
This is a clip where they talk about hot steel-toed boots.
Up to 10 times a night, often until 2 in the morning, delivering whatever it is rescue workers need to do their jobs, like the ones working in the hot spots.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things.
Steel-toed boots?
Steel-toed boots. Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guys' boots just melt within a few hours, and they're burning their feet.
That story was repeated again and again and again. People assumed it was proof that it was hot. When my steel oven melts, the turkey inside is more than well done. So how can you have steel-toed boots melting and there's no reports of burned feet? How I hear that is the boots were coming apart. They're disintegrating. Someone suggested it was because of heat. And people just ran with that story. It was the best, the only answer they got to the questions. They ran with it. But something was likely happening to those boots. But you can't walk around on a barbecue grill without burning. Yeah, it was that temperature. Mayor Giuliani.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground. I could be standing here and you could be standing there. And I could be describing to you, Governor, the site. And then a fire would break out in between us. And we should find luck or the design of God would want to kill.
He was standing on 2,000 degree temperature pile. He doesn't mean to be sounding like an idiot. He was describing something that he experienced, and that was the best explanation he could give. Weird spontaneous, apparent spontaneous combustion.
Man.
Some other categories we didn't look at, the so-called jumpers. Uh-oh. There it is. We refer to them as jumpers, but did they really jump? They left the building, but we don't know why. Here's the airplane-shaped hole. This wingtip always gets to me, how thin it is. And we have some interesting people up here hanging out of the 105th floor. Closer look, looks like this guy's taking his pants off. This guy has his shirt off. If there's a fire in there, your clothes protect you from fire. We don't see smoke coming out these windows. What's going on here? Why on earth would someone want to take the clothes off outside the building? They want to live. They're hanging on to the building. This guy's hanging from one hand and 1 foot, taking his pants off. Let's say he has some weird fetish that he just needs to take his pants off. Well, if there's smoke inside, you take a big deep breath, step in, get the pants off, step back out. Why hang from the outside of the building? Well, if I were there and if I was told the building's on fire, I'm going to head to the bathroom right away before we lose water pressure. Wet down whatever extra clothing I have around, wrap around my head, and head for the stairs. I'd be wet. If the fire sprinklers came on, I'd be wet. If they didn't come on, it was hot, I'd be wet, sweating. Good chance that their clothing was wet. Now, why would they want to take off wet clothing? You've heard of active denial system? I'm not saying that's what this is, but just as a parallel. It's a microwave, they put it for crowd control. And it makes you think that you're burning up, so you just have to get out of there. You just leave no matter what. You don't think about it. So maybe some people were jumping from that. Would be a good reason why you'd want to take your wet clothes off. Microwave is many times worse for wet clothing. I don't know if that's what it was, but it's consistent with something like that going on inside the building, but not outside the building. And we do know the building was turning to dust inside for the hour before its demise.
But that one sink in too. That's a powerful one. I am glad that I got this sheet to share that one.
So here we are down to the rolled up carpets. You'll see why I call it that. At the end of the day, you have these street soldiers here. If you have buckling from overload, doesn't it bend over? Doesn't it bend around the horizontal axis? Why is everything straight? If you overload these outer columns, they're going to bend. If you mash something down real hard, it's going to bow out. Yet what we have, instead of having it bend over, is curling around the vertical axis. Here's a cluster of 3 columns. And this lasagna noodle, see, you can't confuse that with a piece of food, but it emphasizes the fact that this isn't loading that does this. Something else happened to this. This is straight. It curled around the vertical axis, not the horizontal axis. How do you get something to bend more than 180 degrees and not even crack? It's a smooth bend and it splits at the seams. This is a very interesting one. I'd like to have somebody, you know, an engineer who claims that that's normal, draw me a free body diagram and show me the loading to put on that beam to make it do that. You know, it's not like a rubber band that recoils. If it's hot and it's flowing, it doesn't have the strength to recoil. So how do you explain this crinkling up, like curling ribbon? Now that's what buckle beams look like. They don't do that. You see through holes there. It just happened at one place. This was found in Banker's Trust. Banker's Trust was determined to have not had any fires in it. So we're going to begin the proof of concept. Okay, here's what we found at the World Trade Center. And here's something that John Hutchison bent. It's molybdenum. It's not cracked in the corners either. It's smooth curling. When I first contacted John Hutchison, I sent him this picture and said, does your neighborhood ever get to looking like this? Because you have this toasted vehicle here, and the one in front is parked in the right place, but it's just got the tires in the wrong direction. You know, it's not oriented correctly. And notice all the marble around the doorway is gone. The rest of the building, there's no stab wounds in the building, no big beams went flying through. Another weird thing is the window glass. Sometimes just the outer pane's broken. Rock doesn't do that. Evidence of levitation.
South Park and down, I was across the street, and I picked up the camera just out of habit. And something in the back of my mind said, run, run, run. And never in 20 years of shooting in New York have I run from an assignment. But something in the back of my head just said, run. And as I hit the corner of Liberty Street, it was almost being picked up by a tornado. Almost being picked up by me. It was like being picked up with a black cloud. Black cloud had substance. It was like night, but it had a solid feel to it. It was like gravel, hot gravel, and just picked me up and tossed me about a block. At 1 second I was running, and the next second I was airborne. And I lost my glasses, I lost my cell phone, I lost my pager, but managed to hold on to both cameras. But it threw me for a block. I was back there at Ground Zero last week and walked the area where I have a pretty good recollection of where I was and where I wound up, and it was just under a city block.
It was this blast of warm air. It wasn't hot. It was warm. And it picked me up and threw me up against the wall of the building I was in. You were picked up off the ground. Physically picked up off the ground.
I remember an explosion. At that point, I got knocked out. I don't remember anything. Then I got up, and I looked out the window because the windows exploded, and the street below caved in.
There's still the trees. This is in good shape, but upside down. The cars appear to be either flipped or toasted. Now let's consider something else here. John Hutchison's work, he's got water drifting up, levitation of water.
We're going to close tonight's ministry with looking at Proverbs chapter 20 and 21. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. The terror of a king is like the growling of a lion. Whoever provokes him to anger forfeits his life. It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. The purpose in man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. A king who sits on the throne of judgment winnows all evil with his eyes. Who can say, I have made my heart pure, I am clean from sin? Unequal weights and unequal measures are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Even the child makes himself known by his acts, by whether his conduct is pure and upright. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will have plenty of bread. Bad, bad, says the buyer, but when he goes away, then he boasts. There is gold and abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Take a man's garment when he has put up security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts it up security for foreigners. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth will be full of gravel. Plans are established by counsel, by wise guidance, wage war. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a simple babbler. If one curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in utter darkness. An inheritance gained hastily in the beginning will not be blessed in the end. Do not say, I will repay evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will deliver you. Unequal weights are an abomination to the Lord, and false scales are not good. A man's steps are from the Lord. How then can man understand his way? It is a snare to say rashly, it is holy, and to reflect only after making vows. Chapter 5. A wise king winnows the wicked and drives the wheel over them. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all his innermost parts. Steadfast love and faithfulness preserve the king, and by steadfast love his throne is upheld. The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Blows that wound cleanse away evil. Strokes make clean the innermost parts. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Every man's way seems right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. To the righteous, to righteousness and justice, to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Haughty eyes and a proud heart. The lamp of the wicked are sin. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. The violence of the wicked will sweep them away because they refuse to do what is just. The way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the pure is upright. It is better to live in the corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. The soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no mercy in his eyes. When a scoffer is punished, the simple becomes wise. When a wise man is instructed, he gains knowledge. The righteous one observes the house of the wicked. He throws the wicked down to ruin. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe, strong wrath. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terrors to evil doers. One who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. Whoever loves wine and oil will not be rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous and the traitor for the upright. It is better to live in the desert than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. Precious treasures and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scales of the city of the mighty and brings down the stronghold in which they trust. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long he craves and then craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with evil intent? A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but the upright gives thought to his ways. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but as in all things, the victory belongs to the Lord God. And we're going to offer up some prayer to him right now. If any of you are too shy, and want to see what it would be like to be in the show. Now, I'm going to put this link in the chat room. Don't click on it till after I pray and sign off. But if you want to test your microphone or anything like that, and also know I pay the extra $20, for this Screencastify. I'm not using the free thing so that up to 10 guests could be on at a time. I've never had more than three or four. Some of those guys were, hi. So here's that, don't click on it yet. But if you want to try it out, I'll stay on for a couple of minutes. But what a powerful show. Almost 4 hours. And Dr. Judy Wood, right on time. Something big's happening. I don't know if it's the bird flu like we started out with. Remember that? The title of this, Gain of Function? and all that, they're doing this to you. And that's why I'm gonna try to at least close the prayer with a good prayer on getting some good sleep tonight. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this chance to share tonight. You have invigorated me. And dear Heavenly Father, just to be led by your Spirit, to know that, by the end of tomorrow, dozens of people will have seen this and hopefully have been blessed and learned more and more about, well, we've studied so much, but especially premillennialism. We thank you for that. I pray for all of the people with their tummies so upset, and I want them to realize they're under attack, and the only thing is strong medicine of healthy food to battle them. That is our hope. I want to thank everyone, and hopefully the Spirit will allow, and we'll be hoping for another show tomorrow afternoon on the Lord's Day. It's a very special day to me. And I pray, Heavenly Father, that you will grant that sweet sleep of a working man, because they have paid attention and studied so hard. And what I know, there is a narrow road. We're supposed to watch out for wolves, so that implies there are sheep on the narrow road, mostly sheep. Heavenly Father, help them, I pray. We ask for that and so much more. In Jesus' name, amen. It is a flat earth nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. And it's going to remain a flat earth nation. And I'm never going to tell you anything else. Why would I? I'm trying to prove that I have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.